camaraderie with everyone around you, and you're just excited and ready to play.
It's almost being like an NFL player, you know, like kind of seeing like what they kind of go through, and seeing like that big crowd and all of them roaring at you, and knowing that they're all there for you. It's cool. Oh yeah, I got to hold the trophy. It's just like all the emotions from all that hard work in the off season, all that comes together. It was worth it in the end.
When you walk out to the field and you're walking on the rubber padding and you have your cleats on, you have your pads on, and you walk out, and it's totally different than walking out here when we play at Long Beach Poly, and this is an NFL stadium, and the place is packed. This is the stuff that dreams are made of. You know, kids dream about this their whole lives, and to be there for the second time in 2 years is pretty incredible. And to look at the guys that are all around me, surrounding me, the people that I've played with in last year's state title, I mean, it's incredible. When you feel the weight of the trophy, you know, you actually feel the weight of the blood, sweat, and tears that your brothers have put into it. And I mean, yeah, it's a pretty incredible journey to come to a climax.
I have a 4.0 GPA, and then hopefully I want to get into electrical engineering and pursue that.
Being a 4.0 student and setting standards for other students to look at and other teachers to say, you know, that's a Centennial football player. And even in the community as a football player, you know, someone could say, oh, he plays for Centennial, you know, he's a Kaya.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you waiting the 68 seconds. We're going to go ahead and officially start the meeting as I bang the Thor hammer. Now we're ready. All right, we appreciate you being here tonight. We know you have a lot of other things going on, but we do appreciate your input and your support of public district education. So we'll go ahead and start off. We just had an executive session. We are now returning to our regular session. And we'll start off with our moment of silence. Gives us about 30 seconds if you all stand up and join us and kind of gather our thoughts. And then we'll move right into the Pledge of Allegiance by Tuesday Elias, a senior at Cactus High School.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, Tuesday. You're the second person I've ever met in my entire life named Tuesday. So, I know, right? It's been like 20 years. Pretty cool. Thank you for being here. All right, our next item on the agenda is always our favorite part, staff recognitions. Mrs. Airy brings us great news and honoring all of our students and teachers and everybody who makes this district amazing. So thank you for being here also.
Thank you. Good evening, President Bullock, members of the board, Dr. Santarelli. This, I have to admit, is by far one of my favorite recognitions that we get to do all year, so you are all in for a real treat. As you know, we have 7 high schools within the Peoria Unified School District, and each campus is led by a student body president, and these are exceptional elected leaders on their campuses. Something we are particularly proud of here in the Peoria Unified School District is the Superintendent Student Advisory Council, a program that Dr. Santarelli started about 7 or 8 years ago to meet with our student body presidents on a regular basis throughout the school year, provide an opportunity for the students to give us as leaders some feedback and also to give some insight to Dr. Santarelli on what we're doing well, maybe some things we could change, and he has taken many, many of those ideas to heart over the years and over his time here in the district. We invite these students in each year so that we can, of course, honor and recognize them, and it's a particular highlight, of course, of our evening and of our time. We are very pleased to have invited them here this evening. A number of them were able to join us, as you can imagine, as leaders on their campus. They are incredibly quite busy. And this year's group of student body presidents is just remarkable. So it's really my honor and my pleasure to introduce them to you this evening. Before I do that, I am going to ask Dr. Santarelli to come around in front of the dais so that we can invite them up. And I know he has a token of his appreciation that he would like to present to the leaders. While he's making his way around, I believe we have some of our high school principals here with us this evening. If I can have the high school principals stand for a moment so we can give them a round of applause. I know they provide an incredible amount of support to our student councils on each of their campuses, and I know it's a particular point of pride for them as well to have such stellar leaders on their campuses. So students, when I call your name, I'm going to invite you up to go share this makeshift stage we have here with Dr. Santarelli. He has a token of appreciation to present to you, and then if you'd stay there with him, I would appreciate it till we get through to the end. So from Cactus High School, and you just had an opportunity to meet her for a brief second, Tuesday Elias. Kylie Erickson's from Centennial High School. She wasn't able to join us this evening, but a round of applause for Centennial High School. From Ironwood High School, Stephanie Sepulveda, and I know she is joining us in progress. I think she's running just a few minutes behind this evening, but she'll be with us. But round of applause for Stephanie. Maddie Benavides from Liberty High School. Javon Freeman from Peoria High School, and he wasn't able to be with us this evening. Kathy Wynn from Raymond S. Kellis High School. Megan Zimbelman from Sunrise Mountain High School. And a big thank you to each of them for all the support that they provide to our student councils. You should know that each of these students, we take turns hosting the meetings on their campuses. So today we had the pleasure of being at Cactus High School and enjoying our last meeting together there with them. So we very much appreciate that. I know we have a couple of photos, so students, I'm going to ask you to clump together just a little bit and to present those proudly. And I know we're going to snap a couple of photos, make sure we can share how wonderful you are on social media. So a big thank you to you. Students, I'm going to invite you up here with me, and I know Dr. Santarelli certainly will have some words he wants to share of his thanks and appreciation, and then after that, we will also invite the board to do so. So, Dr. Santarelli.
Thank you, Ms. Zeri, Mr. Bullock, members of the governing board, good evening. And certainly, as Mrs. Zeri very appropriately stated, one of the highlights certainly of the year is the opportunity to meet with young people. We are a district that prides itself on collaboration and getting feedback from everywhere that we possibly can. But as I tell them, the rubber meets the road through their eyes and what they experience each and every day. And so their feedback has been extremely valuable through the years. I will tell you one other thing, and many of the folks in the audience were at the event last week at Cactus High School that was put on 100% by our students. And as I said to them today, and I've said in many locations, what a total validation of how awesome our young people are. And when you take a look at exit outcomes or 21st century skills, every one of them was demonstrated to perfection that morning, and it was generally one of the highlights of my career. So I want to thank you publicly for being so awesome. I did tweet that out, by the way, and I'm not a big Twitter guy, but I thank you for your awesomeness. Just a couple of other comments, and then I'll turn this back over to Mr. Bullock. Even today, when we had our last meeting, as is typical at the end of the year, I asked the students, what can we do better? What are the things that are top of mind for you as you are leaving us? And I indicated to them that they would likely get an email or something from us in a couple of years. So looking back, they could also give us feedback. But as they're exiting and have contributed immensely to their campuses and the experiences in our community, so what is it we should consider? What are the things? And it was very interesting and probably no surprise to anyone here. And it was a consistent theme across each one of them. The first one was they really enjoy and benefit from authentic application of learning in real life types of situations. And they talked about internships and bringing professional experiences into the classroom and how those are the kinds of things that we need to continue to provide in a greater way than we already do. They also spoke very eloquently about things that we could do to better assist them, particularly in their junior year, with preparation for college, acceptance and scholarship, and all of the things that are very important to all of us. And so those are just a couple pearls of wisdom. There are many, many, many others throughout the course of the year, but certainly I want to thank you, appreciate your valuable feedback, and I know you're going to go on to do awesome things. We went around the room and they shared all of their experiences that they're hoping to have as they go on to college and university and to life, and it was just heartwarming. And as I told all of them, if their paths ever coincide with the field of education, they're hired. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Senator, you have quite an envious position to be able to work with the future leaders here that we don't get to do that. We just get to honor you and revere you, so that's cool, which we will do now. And some questions, hard questions. School's not out yet. Just making sure. Ms. Pangrilli, would you like to kick off?
Oh, I just want to congratulate you and thank you for all your hard work on each one of your campuses. And I just want to know, I guess, what colleges are you looking at, and what areas are you looking at getting into? Is teaching one of them?
My mother's a teacher, and so that's definitely in my blood, I guess you could say, but I'm not looking at it right now. I'm thinking of going to U of A in the fall, and bear down, yeah. I'm undecided on what I want to study. I'm thinking of social work or finance, so pretty different, but I do know that I want to minor in Spanish, so.
I plan to go to ASU and study marketing. I also found an interest in public relations after watching Miss Ari do a wonderful thing with her job. Yeah.
Very nice.
I'll be attending the University of San Francisco, and I will be studying biology with a focus in pre-med and an internship in the trauma field.
Wow.
I'm going to NAU, and yes, woohoo! Right now, I am majoring in business management and finance. I'm looking into like public relations and speaking and all that stuff. And then I'm interested in law and being an attorney one day. So yeah.
Very cool.
Outstanding.
Mr. Johnigan.
Yes. First of all, Mrs. Ari is referred to as the universe's best media person, so she is that good. Yes, that's a great way to set your sights. I've had the opportunity to meet some of you on school tour around your own campus, and I would agree with Dr. Santarelli. During all those interactions, you all demonstrated excellence in all aspects, the way you spoke, the way you presented, the way you led the whole tour. So just want to commend you publicly on all of those wonderful times that we had. But I do have a question, and my question is, this is a great leadership experience that you've had for this year. And looking back on the year, I'm sure there'll be a question down the road that'll talk about, what can we do different and things of that nature. But I want to just have you focus on a highlight. What was the one highlight from each of you over this past year in this role that you would like to share with everyone here today?
I think my highlight was every Friday I meet with my administrators and we go over what is happening in the school, happening in student council, and it really gave me experience with talking to adults and people in leadership positions, and really increased my confidence. And I guess it was just cool feeling like an insider too, like, haha, I know all this, but that was fun, yeah.
My highlight would be the focus on time management. In student council, we do make a lot of schedule things done on time.
My highlight was definitely working with my peers. So I was able to lead a group of people, and it made me realize that what I want to do in my career and the paths that I want to take and what's important for me professionally. So it actually has set me up really well for, I think, what I want to do for my life. This is a tough question. I would say my highlight are just all the lessons that I've learned. Wanting to be a business owner in my future. I come from a family of business owners. I've really learned to keep patience, definitely, time management, being a leader, definitely, and knowing how to make the right and wrong decisions. And like, you have to be the bad guy sometimes, and it is what it is, but you have to make tough decisions, and it's been a blessing being in the position that I've been with and having the administrators that I work with. So just this experience was just like no other.
Very cool.
Well,
Ms. Dunn?
I'm sorry.
No, no.
And I'm glad that you each had something different to say here. And the reason for that question really was to find each of the individualities of what you can pull out of a role like this. And I know you have about a month left in high school, so I would just ask of you to go find whoever's going to, be the next, and give them those words of encouragement, and really let them know what's possible and how they can make it their own as well. So thank you for all that you did.
Very cool. Sorry to interrupt you, sir. Okay. Ms. Doan?
Well, I don't really have any questions, but I would like to say, having met each of you, on campus and doing your things, very impressed with your confidence and your knowledge and your ability to, just deal with the situations as they came up. And I'd like to say, I think that being part of the council probably did you in a lot of good stead in your future as leaders in the community. And I hope to see you back here doing some leadership in this community in the future. Thank you.
Mrs. Connect?
Girls, I just want to say, wow, you blow us all away with your maturity and your composure. And when my older daughter was in student council, and I know how hard you work and how many hours you put in, especially on Spirit Week. And so I want to validate that, and to your families too. The amount of hours that you put in is just mind-boggling. So thank you so much.
So we've had some additions. Ms. Airy, if you want to introduce them, that'd be great.
Yes, so thrilled that we have 2 additions, and so Javon, Stephanie, I'm going to ask you to step up in front. The ladies already went through this part, but Dr. Santorelli has a little something to present to you. Ladies and gentlemen, Javon Freeman from Peoria High School, Stephanie Sepulveda from Ironwood High School. And now that they're all together, if we could maybe get one more photo collectively together, that would be great. Thank you, Tuesday. All right, Facebook. One, two, three. Okay, good.
Our 2 new additions didn't get a question asked, and I will not ask them a question, so they just walked in. But, it's interesting. I think Tuesday, you said something about it was cool, or no, maybe, I forget which one said, I'm sorry, about actually working with adults. You said that, right? I recently became an adult, so. Are you sure? I'll not ask a question, which is going to scare my board members to think I'm an imposter, as I always ask questions. I want to give you a piece of adult advice from my, if you can avoid all the mistakes I made, you'll be 10 times as successful. You all, and other students as well who we've honored in the past, but you all have what's called the it factor. And the it factor is what is your competitive advantage, whether it's medical, whether it's social work, finance, legal, whatever it is, it's irrelevant at this point. You're going to be successful at it. So here's my challenge to you. Identify what gave you the it factor that allowed you to become successful at where you are right now in your stage of life, and base the rest of your life around that it factor. Truly successful people, and again, you can be a rock star, a carpenter, dentist, it doesn't really matter. All successful people have identified their it factor, which got them to this point, and then expanded out from that and based their life, everything, family, social, spiritual, everything based on that it factor. And they have exploded and walked and had doors opened up and have written their own ticket. And ultimately, that's what you want to do. You want to write your own ticket. So that's my challenge. By the end of this school year, identify what it is that gave you the it factor. What is the it that you have? And then start building everything. Let that be the focal point. No matter what you do, every decision you make, Go, what's my it factor? How will that factor into my it factor? And you'll be so far ahead of everybody else that you'll write your own ticket. So that's my challenge to you, because I've seen it work 1,000 times, and I've seen it fall 1,000 times when people didn't base their lives on what made them successful at a young age. So if you do that, we'll get out of your way, because you're going to really make things happen. So thank you very much.
He is absolutely right. He's talking about strengths-based leadership. And if you need a little help getting started, go to strengthsfinders.com.
Not get a commission endorsing any book or anything. I'm just giving you free advice. Just joking.
But it's fun.
No, it's a good one.
That's right.
So anyway, but do that, all right? And thank you. We are very excited. Thank you for making the district look amazing. And go conquer. Don't stop now. You're just getting started. So thank you very much. Okay. All right, Miss Airy, do we have more? We want to keep the highlight going. So you're good? Okay, Dr. Santarelli.
Thank you, Mr. Bullock. Certainly, I'd be remiss, too, if I didn't personally thank and congratulate the Stuco sponsors and advisors who do a wonderful job, and their work is tireless. So any of our Stuco folks here? No? Okay. So I see some of them that are here. They're just not standing up. Thank you for what you do. A couple of other recognitions that I'd like to go through right now. Congratulations to Oakwood Elementary School for winning the Copper Conference Boys Softball. Congratulations, Oakwood. And on the other side of the ledger, the boys in the Turquoise Conference, the championship game was won by Heritage Elementary School. So congratulations, Heritage. I think most of you are aware that Liberty High School's wrestling team won the state championship recently. What you may not know is that the city of Peoria actually recognized them and declared Peoria Liberty Lions State Wrestling Championship Day recently at a city council meeting. So congratulations to Liberty. I know Mr. Barrett's here, and you know that Mr. Barrett has worked diligently with his staff around the topic of leadership and capturing kids' heart. And I will tell you that we found out just last week that Country Meadows, under Mr. Barrett's leadership, has been recognized as a national showcase program by Flip Flippin', and that is awesome. So congratulations, Country Meadows. I understand that there's also a scholarship award that comes with that, where you get to name another school to benefit for tens of thousands of dollars of the training. So be nice to Mr. Barrett if you're interested. Peoria High School's in the house tonight, and we have one of Peoria High School's teachers that was recently recognized by the Frank Luke Chapter Air Force Association as Teacher of the Year in grades 9 through 12. That goes out to Mr. Brian Fuller in the Ag and Hydroponics program. Mr. Fuller will be representing, of course, himself and Peoria High School in the district as one of 4 that will compete in the state Teacher of the Year competition. So congratulations to Mr. Fuller. And last but certainly not least, you know, recently we recognized Cactus High School Robotics, and you know they will be participating in the World Championships here in April. Matter of fact, one of the gentlemen was recognized last night as a Volunteer of the Year from that program. Liberty High School. Their engineering club also recently won Skills USA competition earlier this month, and their mobile robotics technology took first place in Skills USA. So we have engineers budding all over the place. So congratulations, Liberty High School. Thank you, Mr. Bullock.
Good night, everybody. Is it okay if we officially dub the robotics program teacher who's brought them to a national competition as Optimus Prime?
Absolutely.
Just guessing. All right. Thank you very much. Let's move on to our next item on the agenda is board recognitions. It's a quick chance for board members to discuss anything that they have recognized or noticed they want to bring attention to over the past couple of weeks. Before we do that, though, it's interesting how everyone goes to concerts, right? We all love concerts, and we pay top dollar for what? The front seats, right? The front, you can like almost just touch the performer. not advocating that, of course, but we actually have some very, very high-priced seats. There's some people in the back who you may not have paid anything, and that's okay. We will cover the cost of these amazing seats up front. We're actually 3D from this angle. Would you like to come up? We have about 10 seats. There we go. Yes, there we go. All right, that's board recognition. We'll start to my left. Ms. Doan, anything that you're going to talk about this week?
I don't have anything tonight.
Ms. Connect?
I'm glad I got to go first on this. Last night, we went to the volunteer appreciation event at Foothills Elementary. It was a packed house. It was such a good feeling, a good vibe, being able to reach out and thank all the volunteers who give so much to our schools. And I believe the amount of money, they said if they added it all up, all the volunteer hours, it was like $500,000 worth of volunteer hours that the good people of our community give to our schools. So that was really great. And then the other thing is, oh boy, the National School Boards Conference was really exciting this time, and I can't wait to sit down around a table with my fellow board members to do some show and tell about the really exciting things we learned.
Wonderful. Ms. Pangarelli? Okay, Mr. Johnigan?
Well, actually, I attended those two events as well, and
Stole them.
yes, you did. Well, that's okay. Last time, I guess I took a couple from you. But I, too, want to just say how awesome the night was last night, Volunteer Appreciation Celebration. To see that many volunteers and that every school was represented and that we took the time to recognize all their dedication, all that extra work, all the things that help make our district that much stronger and that much better. That was just heartwarming to myself, and it was the first one I've attended, and just fantastic event. As well as the National School Board Association Conference in Boston. It was a fantastic event, and I too look forward to sharing all the great learnings that we got from that. So.
Awesome. I'm going to give a quick impromptu board recognition to everybody here tonight. Thank you for coming out. I know we have some good talking. We have some good ideas. I just appreciate everybody coming out and you know, standing up for what you believe in and want to discuss it and have some good conversations. So thank you for being here. We appreciate it. We rarely get this big of a turnout unless we have controversy or food. So, well, I'm just giving you a hard time. We appreciate you being here. We seriously do. All right, next item on the agenda is number 7, request to address the governing board regarding matters not included on the agenda. Ms. McCarty, do I have any of those? Okay, and thank you, students, teachers, principals, everybody. I have to say, I'm quite impressed. This is the first time in the last 4 months that when we said goodbye to all the recognitions, the place didn't become a chirping fest with 3 people here. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda then is address agenda and consider adoption of or recommended changes. The chance for the board to rearrange the agenda for any specific purpose or expediency or someone speaking. Anybody want to change anything on the agenda? Any order? All right, we move forward as stated. Let's move on to the next item, number 9, approval of employee cost agreement with Educational Services Incorporated for the services of Dr. Darwin Stifler for District Superintendent. This is an action item, requires a motion and a second. Any discussion, comments, questions? If not, I will look for a motion.
President Bullock, I motion that we recommend that the governing board approve the employee cost agreement as directed by the board's legal counsel.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved. Why do I keep saying firsted? Bad English. Moved by Mr. Johnigan, seconded by Ms. Pangarelli. This is an action item. Board members, please cast your vote. No, it's not showing up. Is everybody logged in? Mm-hmm. There we go. Power of suggestion. All right, that motion passes 5-0. Welcome, Dr. Stifler. And keeping in that vein, item number 10 actually is the introduction of Dr. Darwin Stifler. If you don't mind, if you'd like to come up to the podium, and it's your time if you want to say a few words. First of all, on behalf of the board, welcome, sir. Thank you.
President Bullock, members of the board, Dr. Sanarelli, I am beyond thrilled to be here. Super, super excited. July 1 seems like a long time away, and it seems like it's going to be here next week. both of those things. I kind of wrote a script, I'm going to go off that. I want to say I was so gratified to hear people actually cheer Wildcats when I was in the Phoenix area, so thank you for that. Thank you for that. What do I want to say? I want to tell you this. I want to thank you for the way you ran the process, all of that, but I want to thank for the whole state of Arizona before I guess now I get to officially be part of the district, the beacon of excellence that Peoria has been in so many ways. And deep down, I'm a civics teacher, started high school way back when doing that, and going through, I truly believe that that America rose to greatness on the backs of public schools. And it's just nearly criminal, it seems to me, the way Arizona makes it difficult to do that. And yet Peoria succeeds again and again and again and again. And I could not be more proud or more excited to be a part of that. And I got to tell you, the networks across the state are amazing. So you voted last Tuesday to enter salary negotiations. I was in New Jersey. I started getting calls. First, I started getting calls from like the construction people. Then I started getting calls from the child nutrition people who apparently have a secret network and they all talk to each other. Then the principal network was a little bit behind that as they were going like that. The IT, all of that. And everyone was just like, wow, Darwin, you are a very lucky man.
Yeah.
That's where I want to end right there, I suppose. I'm excited to get to know everyone here. I have no agenda except to become a fully involved part of the greatness that is here, to run the plan. And I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
As board members, any questions? Probably, no, you're good. I think we're questioned out, but I'm just gonna, just in case. You know, actually, I wouldn't have you make you go up there, but I did this to Mr. Hancock when he first became our director of HR, and I have to do the same to you. What is your favorite element of the periodic table of the elements?
I'll go with hydrogen.
Why not? All right, thank you, sir. All right, next item on the agenda is number 11. Presentation discussion of the comprehensive capital needs of the district. Oh, I greatly apologize. I'm sorry, would you mind holding off for a second? I jumped the gun with the excitement. We're actually going to go back one item. Oh, let me take us to that item. We actually, and I feel bad, Dr. Stifler, we actually, the board members, and I take a flogging for this. I got caught up in the excitement, and I neglected to look to my right and left. They all wanted to say something as well. So I will now, let's do that. So apparently my question about the periodic thing was like...
I'm going to stay with hydrogen. Okay.
Right. Well, it was also insignificant compared to what they're going to ask you. Mr. John, again, would you like to go ahead and start with comments, sir?
Absolutely. Not a question for you, but I just wanted to voice an opinion that I had during this process, and I wanted everyone to know. I think we all just heard a lot and saw and witnessed a lot of the passion that Dr. Stifler is going to bring forward and is going to help lead this great district into the future. One of the things that really spoke volumes to me about Dr. Stifler was his drive and passion towards teacher advocacy. It is something that I look forward to working with him on. Finding the right solutions, and I can tell you that he is absolutely 100% about building bridges and making sure that everybody is well represented, everyone feels valued, respected, and I think that's a huge attribute, and I want to just say thank you for demonstrating that, and I look forward to the actions that follow.
Thank you, Mr. John. Again, if I can follow up on that, I think I might have shared with the board, but if not, I do want everyone to know. The first couple of years of my current superintendency is I put on my tie every morning, because my wife reminds me we don't need a superintendent at home, that we don't need me to teach any classes and we don't need me to principal any schools, that we have principals and that we have teachers, and let's empower those folks to do the job that they need to do. And so, thank you. And it would be difficult to care more than I do, sir. It would be difficult.
Well, I just wanted to welcome you to the district, and it was an extremely long and difficult decision, but we're happy to have you. And just piggybacking on Mr. Jonigan, yeah, through the process, I really enjoyed your high level of energy, which came out in the public forum and your experience. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm thrilled. Thank you.
You bet. Mrs. Doan, any comments, potential question?
Well, Dr. Stifler, I would like to say, welcome aboard. I'm really looking forward to working with you. I was very impressed by your desire to advocate for the teachers, to just dig right in and make a place. And I could see that you were ready to do what needs to be done and learn what needs to be learned. And as board members, we know how difficult that can be. I mean, we don't have your job, but when we get here, we're kind of noobs, you know? And so I could see your excitement and your readiness to get on board, and I want to welcome you and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Good. Mrs. Connect.
Dr. Stifler, welcome. You are absolutely right about how wonderful and excellent the Peoria School District is. We're all very fortunate to be associated. Couple things that you said that I liked, that you're eager for new challenges. I think it's an exciting time to embrace new challenges. I love that you're passionate about public education, and I like that you're willing to have courageous conversations with legislators. I think we'll have lots of opportunity to do that. So welcome aboard.
I know that you're very well versed at that, and actually after this meeting, I have some letters to write to some of my current legislators.
And the thing that you said that was very nice is, one of the questions we asked you is how you would define a successful student, and you said a happy student.
Yeah.
And I think that's very nice.
Actually, I'm gonna give a two-way comment here, two-way compliment. I was very encouraged by your desire to work with the board, and I've been on the board three and a quarter years now, and I owe all that I've learned and success to the whole district, obviously, but a lot to Dr. Santarelli. A huge compliment to being, and Dr. Cruz and the whole administrative staff, to really wanting to work with the board. We don't always agree, of course. We bang heads from time to time as appropriate, but your desire to really work with the board and sit down and get to know us all very well, because we're five, we're a body of five, but five complete different individuals. We think completely different on a lot of things, but we come together. And Dr. Santarelli has built such an amazing foundation for this board, and I'm glad that you want to not toss it away and try and create your own thing, but carry that forward, because we've got a really good thing going right now. Thank you to Dr. Santarelli and Dr. Cruz, and so I appreciate you wanting to continue that, because we've seen across the state a dysfunctional board creates chaos for everybody in this room, and a well-functioning board not always agreeing, but being respectful and willing to grow and learn and work together is what really builds the dynamic district that Peoria is. The employees, of course, obviously, but I'm saying from a administrative and a policy-making point of view, so I'm excited about that opportunity that's been created that will be carried on.
Thank you. And I don't want to prolong the meeting, but I'm afraid I won't get another chance to say that the district as a whole is vaunted and respected across the state, but your executive leadership team, Dr. Cruz, Mr. Hicks, and Dr. Santarelli, among the ranks that I populate, are respected and admired and needed across the state. And I don't think he'll let me say that again, but I'm here right now, so I'm telling him. I'd ask everyone to look at that man and tell that man, thank you.
Yeah.
My fellow board members, I'm sorry I jumped the gun there. I know you all wanted to say something. You need to throw things at me in the future, very light and soft. All right, number 11. Thank you, Mr. Hicks, for waiting. Presentation and discussion of the comprehensive capital needs of the district. And if you don't mind, and probably part of your presentation, but for those who aren't sure why this came about or what's it for, if you could give us a quick little bit of backstory or history, that would be great.
Of course. Good evening, President Bullock, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Santarelli, Dr. Cruz, colleagues and community members. Thank you very much for allowing me to present tonight. Yes, the genesis of this agenda item started with actually Dr. Santarelli starting last fall, or maybe it was over the summer, as we're identifying goals and initiatives. One of his initiatives was we need to do a better job of understanding and assessing the district's capital needs across the entire district in that sense. And so we started really probably not until the fall of just starting brainstorming what are we going to do. At that point, we understood from last year's Citizens Bond Advisory Committee, Citizens Bond and Override Advisory Committee, that they were not going forward with a bond at that time, and they were going to reconvene in December. And so at that time, there was a melding of two ideas of assessing what the bond needs are, which is a capital, and then incorporating the entire capital needs. And so that is why we are here today, is we went through a process. I will say, even though I'm billing it as a comprehensive capital needs of the district, we did not engage a company or a firm to actually go in and inspect and do full inspections of our buildings. That is very expensive. And so we did do a very thorough job of identifying a lot of our capital needs, and we tried to separate them between those that were identified for our 2012 bond, let them stay in the 2012 bond, and really we were just trying to identify our capital needs going forward and things that were not identified in the previous bond and that are still there. And so we embarked working with the principals, asking the principals and the site administration and departments to look at, assess their needs, what have they been asking for and needing, walking their sites, working with their site groups, their site council, and then identifying a process of which they start submitting some ideas or some thoughts of some of their needs at the site, and then creating a vetting process here at the district office to look at it. First, we would go through and look at, is it in the 2012 bond, take it out. Then we started seeing some common themes that a lot of the sites were asking for, so then we just grouped those into a district-wide thought. Let's just do that district-wide, and pulled those out of schools. And then continued to vet the process, first through executive administration, then we took it to the council here at the district office, going through and asking the K-12s to work through their administrative and their clusters, just to give some additional oversight and look at what has been submitted. And so this here is a culmination of that process that's been going through, and part of what also is the genesis, although I'm saying obviously my boss put it as one of my goals and objective I have to do, is part of that genesis is that capital continues to be stressed, as we have talked about here at the governing board many times. With our capital being cut, we're supposed to be receiving about $17 million in additional assistance, and it's about less than $15 million. So with less than $3 million, so it's a little over $2 million. So with a nearly $15 million a year cut now in our capital side, the capital needs are growing. And part of our budget process this year was we did cut all the sites and departments' capital budgets in half. And so with that whole setting of the stresses that are creating, we wanted to kind of look at just a summary overview and get a good idea of where we are as a district in our capital needs. So the first one we're starting with here is the bond summary. And so as I just mentioned through that process, there were a lot of sites that did submit requests that were denied for numerous reasons, and one of them being 2012 bond. And so as this is just a summary of just categories that I've identified by site and the totals, it's imperative. I don't want somebody to walk away saying, oh my gosh, our school got nothing. That does not mean your school got nothing. It's in a district-wide, everything's happening. There's something happening at every school, but instead of having, and I'm trying to think of some right off the top, well, restrooms. Almost every site put in restrooms, put in flooring, put in painting. 2/3 of those are happening in 2012 bond. The other, working with our administrator of facilities, Jared Reynolds, he had already put in, I need to do $6 million of facility needs just on restrooms for bringing up to ADA compliance of the current compliance and just improving all of our restrooms across the district. So that's an example of, that doesn't mean a site did not submit something. It means that when it came in, we were just grouping it different. And so it does have a lot of varying needs amongst the sites. But I just wanted to, in summary, just go through, that was the vetting process. And the summary, here's the bond, and we'll go into a little bit more of the bond when Mr. Kistner gets up on the next agenda item to go through the Citizens Bond Advisory Committee. But I did want to provide in summary, here's what we're looking at. I would not prefer to go through the 400 recommendations that were submitted and go one by one through those to it. But just to give a general overview of the type of what is either it's equipment, building improvement, site improvement, new land, new buildings for growth for a high school and elementary school, all the way down, you can see it comes to a little over 197 million from that standpoint. So the second part of that was there were a lot of things, if we could open up the second document, there were some recommendations or requests for things that were not eligible to be bond. So first there were some denials in bond because A, maybe it didn't meet some of our criteria. We did not think it was justified for a bond. B, it was already in the 2012 bond or it was in another line. But there were some items that are just not eligible for bond expenditures, and so those were denied. And so we did capture, can we open up the second one, the middle one? We did identify a level of non-bond capital needs across the district, and so that really is in general, but just going through, and this is no surprise, the instructional resources, starting with the reading, phonics, and just going all the way down for these 22 requests of types of capital requests that were made by department schools or myself understanding where we are, and then put into an estimated cost, and then just giving, right now, just an estimated, if we were to do this, here's how we would schedule it out over a period of time. And this is all fictitious in nature. We do not have, as I look at the total of this $70 million across these years, we do not have $70 million in non-bond capital funding that we would be able to address these issues. And so please don't look at this timeline and say, oh, right, I'm a high school, my capital allocation just got restored, and now let's go start planning for our high school needs again. This was just to kind of ascertain where we are going back to our high school allocation instead of it being cut in half, restoring that cut and going forward. And so this was just really wanted to just schedule out and identify those $70 million in needs. Now, if somebody was to go down and look at that estimated cost column and they added it all up, it would only come up to $47,410,000. But some of these are annual expenses, and so I did not put the full annual. I put that one time, and then I put it in over the years. And so as you add it up over there, that's just I appreciate all the math geeks out there that like to double check all my work and let me know that 47 does not equal 70, and I appreciate that. But that is the caveat. Some is just a grand total, and some is an annual amount in that sense. And so,
You're welcome.
So now just jumping up to the very top screen, the top PDF, I just wanted to present just in total how that would look with those bond and non-bond expenses on the top. Remember, some level of fictitious planning across the top of here's how we would spend it, and then some projected funding if it was coming. Now, the potential bond is in there. I have seen the Citizens Bond Advisory Council, so I've plugged in those numbers, but we do have some adjacent ways projects and needs that would come forward with a new school, and so I'm trying to plug in with new schools coming in, how those funding would come apart. Funding for adjacent ways is right now until, well, I guess the bill did pass. The legislature changed it prior to this legislative session. It was really just when the board approved our budget that had an increase in the adjacent ways expenditures greater than the revenue, or greater than the cash in the fund. It generated a tax. That tax was approved as soon as the board approved the budget. I did have to do some filings with the Maricopa County. This changes it, and now going forward, we will have to submit all of our requests to the School Facilities Board, which will have to validate. They have 60 days to validate all of our expenses, all of our requests prior to us levying a tax. And so that will have to be incorporated into any new board process of how we go forward with adjacent ways. And adjacent ways are normally bringing utilities to our sites and addressing those ingress and egress with our fire lane and other transportation issues with our facilities and sites. The district additional assistance, that is still somewhat of a fictitious amount. The amount of funding in there is the 2.6. We would love to see a lot more, but that is actually estimated what we're receiving. Plugged in the potential bond and then gifts and donation, didn't put anything in there or any other. So you can see the deficit coming through just on top. There's a $52 million lack of funding for the total projects and costs coming in the projected revenues. And then I projected out over the years what our deficit would be if we were to spend that in the non-bond. So this was really just to provide a good understanding. I think the best picture to take away is right now, you're looking at a bond needs of at least 198. of that is worked through the Citizens Bond Advisory process, and then non-bond capital needs of about $70 million in general. So the goal was just to create some awareness and meet my requirement of my goal that my superintendent set for me. So I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hickson, for complying with your boss. I'll start to my right. Ms. Pangarelli, questions, comments from Mr. Hicks? Mr. John again.
Not really any questions, but just more clarification. We've got on district-wide on the very first slide, 109 million. I'm assuming that you mentioned new schools, so forth. Can you kind of just break that down roughly?
Yeah, President Bullock, members of the board, the 109 million that's district-wide is for the purchase of land for a high school and for a new elementary and high school, and to construct the buildings of those.
And then the other one that kind of grabbed me was the building improvement for arts education for just shy of 24 million. That sounds like almost building a all-new school there. So what's going on there, just as a point of clarification?
President Bullock, members of the board, the roughly 24 million, that is inflation adjusted. So the requests were coming in to do a remodel of all of our performing arts centers at every high school. And the total might have come in around a little over $18 million, but because with the selling of our bond and how we'll have to do it, the first few years will only be focused on new purchasing land and new construction. Everything else will be starting 4 years out and going on to nearly 10 years. The inflation costs of those expenses, I had to add an inflation factor and that such. Also, I do talk to other districts and get feedback, and I believe Paradise Valley's latest performing arts center that they remodeled, I think they spent $5.5 million. And so I do not know the scope of work from that sense, but I look at what we're doing, I try to adjust to what the market conditions and try to add some inflation funding so that we have the funding for when that comes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Doan, questions, comments? Ms. Connect. A quick question. This may be something that gets deferred to the next agenda item, or for later for that matter. Back in 2012, the bond, we did $180 million. We did commission at that time an engineering firm, for lack of a better example. They came up with about $300 million of, here's what if you could write your check, here's what would really fix the district, if you will. It was reduced down to $180 million because there were some wants versus needs. And that's probably a generic way of saying it. Looking at this, approximately $190 million, and again, rough number, can you or are you able to give a recommendation or even a percentage of wants versus needs on this?
President Bullock, members of the board, first, I believe when I've looked at some of the documents, 300 has been a number that's used. There was a lot of projections in there as well. Okay. When we look back at the assessment that was done back in 2010, I believe they identified about 237 million. Okay. The 180 million, 40 million of it was going for technology and about 20 million for transportation. So it left only $120 million. So it almost comes out to the same gap that you're discussing right there. We believe, so some of the vetting process is anything in this bond or this recommendation in the 12. We pushed it to that. There's an assumption there that everything can be handled in that. Now, one of the things that was missing in the 2012 was the inflation factor. And so some of the costs that were identified in 2010 are not nearly still enabled to be done at that point, and our scope changes on some of it. And so we're still working through what was identified, how much do we have available, and then the timing of it and the scope and sequence of it. And so in all honesty, we did not put a lot that was in 2012 in this just because we didn't want to confuse people of, wow, I thought we put roofs in the 2012. Well, we did. Do we know that we're short in roofs in 2012 bond? We are short a little bit, but we didn't want to be coming and saying the same exact thing we need for the next bond. So we left some of that, most of it all out to avoid any confusion. We're hoping that the 2012 will satisfy everything that was identified in that. But that left everything in 2016 that was identified, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Kishner. That was one of their requests was, let's get out a lot of the wants. I know, and let's leave a lot of the needs. And so when you're walking our sites, or you're looking at some of the very detailed, a lot of it's equipment, it's instruments, special ed, CTE. These are all needed for continuing. Can we live without them? Well, we've lived without them now. Some of our sites look pretty bad, and we would like to start improving it. The 2012 did a lot of the backbone that you do not see. And so a lot of it now, they're asking for it. And so we did cut out a lot of the, what I say, the wish lists from that standpoint in the 2006 during that process, and that was part of what the Citizens Bond Advisory Committee wanted. They didn't want it to look like we're going out building, looking to add a lot of extravagant systems or processes or plants. And so we really did try to keep it as minimal as possible, and then they also had a dollar threshold they did not want to go over, so we also had to start cutting down from that to make sure that we were down and under.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then I know it's a crystal ball question, but, and again, I know I'm preaching to the choir as well. There's two overriding issues when it comes to a vote on any kind of financial instrument for a district or any public entity for that matter. You know, there's the perception, and then there's the needs versus wants and messaging, if you will. And so that's always concerns me. Now, more so now that I'm on the board, I'm kind of seeing the underlying, reading all the spreadsheets, seeing what's really going on versus when I wasn't involved in the school board. And that's the biggest problem that I've seen over the last 3.5 years is messaging and, you know, perception and messaging is, are we communicating? They could all be needs, and they are, but how do we communicate that? Because that's the first question I get asked a lot is, boy, you're spending all this kind of money on this or that. It's like, well, if you actually dig deep, you'll see why it's actually necessary to either preserve an investment in a building or a structure, or it's necessary to keep our district on the trajectory we are now of being one of the top districts in Arizona and working towards top 10 district in the United States. So that's why, I mean, I want all of us to be very open about that, asking every question, getting everything out, no suspicions, but getting everything out so everyone goes, oh, okay, you may not vote for it, you may not agree with it, but okay, they're all needs. So that's why I'm going to ask that a couple more times, just so we get that messaging out for everybody who may not read the material that we put out. So thank you for that.
President Bullock, members of the board, I think that's a great conversation to have with Mr. Kistner. He did a great job facilitating the process, and we had many conversations regarding that. I know that I was pushing certain items that I thought were good and efficient for efficiency use, and it was taken out because they did not like what kind of message that would send or where we should be focusing some of those dollars and stuff. So he may or may not share some of that.
Well, that's fine. But I just let you know also, we're going to bring that up, and it's a good conversation to have. So again, everybody goes, okay, I understand it. Again, I may not agree with it, or I may have had a better idea, but okay, you guys vetted it, you did the process. There's nothing, it's completely transparent. There's nothing hidden, because you know how perception breaks out, and I want to make it extremely transparent. So thank you for letting me keep beating you up on that, so in a good way. All right, any other questions for Mr. Hicks? If not, we'll move on to our next agenda item, number 12, discussion and consideration of a recommendation from the PUSD Citizens Advisory Committee related to their analysis of the need for a bond election. We are very happy and privileged to have former board member, Mr. Kistner, with us, who has spearheaded this committee. So thank you for doing that, sir.
Thank you. President Bullock, members of the board, Dr. Santarelli, thank you for allowing me to be here. Excuse me for a minute. Okay, so Mr. Hicks was gracious enough to speak to some of the items in that last report, but as I go through this, I'll touch on some of those items again, all right? First, just to kind of get everybody back onto a same page and remember where we've been and where we've come from, but per PUSD policy, a Citizens Advisory Committee is to examine the educational and building needs of the district. And that is the reason why a committee was formed in the first place. As Mr. Hicks mentioned, back in 2015, the Citizens Advisory Committee was commissioned to look at an M&O override as well as a bond. At that time, we as a committee decided that we did not want to go out for a bond, but we mentioned to the board that we wanted to come right back after the November election and look at that again, okay? So this committee was really a continuation of a committee that had existed prior. There were some changes in the membership, and I'll talk about the members in a minute. You'll remember, as you were here on December 3rd, you approved to form the CAC looking at the potential bond measure and named me as the chairperson. Okay. So to go over a little bit of the process, obviously, we talked about formation of the committee, then we go off and we do our work. And then we come back to tonight. We want to present to you what we did, why we decided the recommendation that we'll talk about in a minute, and just give you some of the background of what we looked at in the data. okay? And then ultimately, it's up to the board to choose whether they take action or not. I think we talked about this at the last Citizens Committee last year, but really the committee has no authority to decide what the district does. You all have the authority to decide what the district does. We simply provide you information and a recommendation that you then choose to act upon. And really, I just wanted to go through, there are three ways that you can choose to act. One, you can either accept our recommendation as I'm going to present it to you. You can reject that recommendation in whole, or you can choose to act in a new direction, modify our recommendation based on the information that you have and your feelings and direction of the district, all right? So just everybody is on the same page. That's really what we're here to discuss. Okay, quick review of the timeline. You saw this back in December when Mr. Hicks presented the idea of going out for a bond. Really just want to talk about the fact that we are on schedule. We were planning to be done with our work in the March-April timeframe and then provide you the recommendation so that you could choose to act as early as the next meeting this month and or the month of May. And then the rest of that is really around, you know, election rules and timelines that are outside of our control, but that the county puts in place, okay? Committee membership. These are the individuals who are on the committee with me, and I think that all I saw here was Mrs. Evans, so since she is here, I would like her to stand up and be recognized as a member of the committee. I don't think I missed anybody else, but the committee with me was Dr. Dick Turbush, which many of you know, Mrs. Julie Smock, Mr. George Stockdale, Mrs. Evans, as we talked about, Mr. Michael Gross, and Mr. Stephen Goucher, and Dr. Bill Burku, some of those people you know. Those were members who continued from last year's committee. And then we did add 2 members to replace a few people who did not want to continue with us, and so we had Mr. Jeff Jensen and Mr. Steve Gillett on the committee as well. So I'd just like to thank all of them for their time and their efforts and their great questions and thoughts and helping me to tell Mr. Hicks no when we needed to. So what did we do? Well, we met for 10 weeks or 10 meetings over 2.5 months, starting in January through March 30th. We met for about an hour and a half on Wednesdays here in the boardroom most of the time. But here at the District Administration Center. So our goal ultimately was to establish whether or not there was a need for bond money. We looked at multiple things, some of which have already been mentioned, but you mentioned and you remember there was a 2012 bond that was for $180 million. I used the $300 million number. More accurately, it's the $230 million number, but throw some inflation in there and we're probably getting closer to that number. But we had third party, back in 2010, we had a third party who had identified projects at our facilities. And they were, I believe, an architectural firm. They went through and they assessed what work needs to be done, what possible work will need to be done in the future. They gave some rough estimates of cost, but that work was all boiled down. It's a long spreadsheet. I know, Mr. Bullock, you like spreadsheets in the evening to help you sleep, so you could certainly read through that if you would like. But the key point I want to make in this 2012 bond discussion is, at that time, it was $180 million of a bond with no money for new construction. Okay? It was as I understand, the first bond without any dollars earmarked for new construction. Okay, so that's an important thing to note. We looked at enrollment projections, some of which you saw in November, I think, at the study session, and then you saw some refreshed numbers a few weeks back when you were discussing Sunset Heights and Liberty High School, and then we looked at all of those numbers and probably some that were maybe more refreshed than that. I looked to Ms. Davy here. I think every time the numbers were put on paper, they were probably changing, because if you're familiar with that area of town, every day it's different than the day before. So we tried to keep up on that as best we could, but we're looking at those projections, looking at those housing developments, looking at what is going on up there. Then something else that we talked about in terms of establishing a need, obviously state budgeting and school facilities board, as mentioned in the previous presentation. I'm sure you guys will continue to talk about in the next presentation about budget, but the school facilities board does not, has not, presumably will not in the near future have any money to provide to school districts such as ours for building renewal, new construction. So that entity that has been created is essentially not available to us for these projects. As well, the state budget, it's been since fiscal year 2008, which was the last time that we, Peoria Unified School District, has received any building renewal money from the state, and it was a reduced amount at that time. So essentially, fiscal year 2007 was the last time that we truly received money for building renewal that we were supposed to be receiving. Just as a point of note, it's something that we took into account as we looked at the need. We spent a lot of time talking about the potential projects and what should and shouldn't be in that list, as has been discussed. And that's certainly not complete. There are obviously some details. Those are estimates. We did the best that we could, knowing looking into the future. I mean, we really are looking at when we're talking about this, we're really looking at what might the need be in the next 3 to 4 years. Because if we're talking about the 2012 bond, there's still projects going on. If we're talking about new construction, we're really talking about what new construction do we need to have completed in the next 3 to 4 years, because of the time horizon that is required to procure land, design a building, build the building. A decision on new construction today does not gain us anything for that period of time. So we were really looking into the future. What is it that we're trying to make decisions based on projections of what we need in 4 years? Not what we need today, but what we need in 4 years. So we spent a lot of time talking about that and working through that list and trying to estimate what that need truly is, okay? As already mentioned in the previous presentation, we looked at site requests, district assessments, the 2012 project list. That list was reviewed, items were removed, we consolidated things. We tried to do the best we could as a Citizens Advisory Committee to vet that, but ultimately the details of that list are up to the district when money is available for those projects to decide the true details of what those are. I do want to add, in terms of the wants versus needs conversation, a lot of those dollars are really tied towards safety, code compliance, and security. Speaking specifically to the performing arts upgrades, we talked about the fact that we have auditoriums at high schools that we were unable to use for periods of time because of a fire code issue, and we had to scramble to get something fixed. This idea is we need to fix those things proactively. We need to get those facilities up to code and a little beyond, so that we don't impact student learning because of outdated equipment, buildings that are not appropriate. So that's really what we tried to focus on, was those safety, security, the needs, not necessarily the wants, and we did take some of those wants out of the list as best we could, okay? Other things that we looked at, obviously, is we asked the questions, well, what is the bonding capacity of the district? There is a financial calculation there that prevents us from having an excess of that capacity, and then also looking at tax rate impacts. We'll talk about that here in a few minutes, a little bit of what we looked at and how that might look should we make certain decisions. Okay, in talking about enrollment and housing, I just put this graph up, or this chart up, as an example. We spent some time talking with a gentleman from the land developer in the Vistancia area. And what I want to point out here on this, and let me get see if I can draw on this a little bit here, but for those of you familiar with Vistancia, this right here is the canal that exists, okay? What you know as Vistancia is everything south of that, okay? This next section of Vistancia, which was waiting on a bridge across this canal, which is now complete, is as large in terms of homes, count of homes, as everything that you know of as Vistancia today. Okay, so Vistancia is going to double at some point. None of us know when that is, obviously, but looking at the 3, 4, 5-year horizon, it stands to reason, given how the economy is today and how building is today, we are going to see homes there in the next 5 years. We may see a lot of homes there in the next 5 years. Something else that many people may not be aware of is that as this line here exists, and I'm not going to be perfect on my placement, but all of this land, that is a development called Lake Pleasant Heights. It is as large as Vistancia, maybe larger, I'm not sure, but it's as large as Vistancia, and it has been waiting for a city water line before it could start development. Well, that city water line starts construction next year, and it already has been paid for. But the developers have already put in all their money, the city has put in their amount of money, that water line is going in. It's not a question, it is going in. As soon as that water line is in, those houses can start. Obviously, the economy is going to drive that start date, but the water which has been holding that back will no longer be a factor. So something to consider when you're looking at that area. For those of you who live in the area and are aware of it, I'm just looking at Vistancia, but as you come further south and further east from Vistancia, there are other developments going on there. And one of them in particular is the Meadows, which this is from the presentation you saw about Sunset Heights, but we talked a lot about this as well. Some of this you've seen. We know anything that's not gray is either built or we're aware of it building and it started and we have some dates and things like that. If it's gray, these two Meadows, or the state of Arizona, okay, so state of Arizona State Land Trust, no developer owns it today, but somebody could buy it tomorrow and start to work on it, but nobody owns it right now. The Meadows, these two blocks here, we know that in the next 3, 4, 5 years, if things continue to go as they are, they will be built out. That's another 600 homes in this area right behind Liberty High School. So we took this into account. We looked at this. Some of this land is in the enrollment projections you've seen before. Some of it would obviously not be in terms of the state of Arizona that nobody owns, but we tried to take that into account as we were thinking about what might the needs be for new construction in the foreseeable future. All right? Something else we talked a lot about is external factors, right? We do not live in a bubble. We are and will be impacted by those around us. So we have a May special election going on, Prop 123, in only a few weeks. And we also, I did put it on there a third, we just had an M&O override election in 2015. There are likely to be other ballot measures in this November as well for our community. So that's a consideration. You know, how might that impact us? How might that not impact us? Something that we wanted to talk about, something that we needed to consider. Okay? So ultimately, what does it really come down to, right? We looked at all of this work, all of this capital need, state budgets, all the items, and there is a need, right? Some of the time horizons are unknown, but there is a need. So really we want to talk about what are the alternatives, right? For you to make a decision, what are the possible things that you could do, and what are some of the consequences if you choose to do any of those items? Obviously, we can always do nothing, right? It's always a choice to do nothing. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the best choice, but it's always a choice. And just to be thinking about it, if we choose today to do nothing different than what we're doing, then we have no planning for enrollment and growth because there is no new construction money in any bonds and for the foreseeable future from the state, okay? But it is an option. We talked about we could potentially delay the bond for another year or more if that were something that needed to be done. The big question there is, can the new construction wait? Can some of the facility projects wait longer? Again, looking back at that 3 to 4 year horizon of pass a bond, sell bonds, buy land, design a school, build a school, that is what we need to assess. Okay, and then also, land and building costs just simply gets more expensive, so the number changes generally in the upward direction only. So that is a consequence of delay. We did talk about what if we looked at just going out for what is absolutely needed first. And if the biggest issue that we have right now is growth in the northern part of the district and we need land and new construction dollars, is do we just go out for that? One of the consequences of that obviously is that you would then need to go out again for the other facilities and equipment projects in maybe a shorter time period between bonds. It's an alternative, but there are consequences. And then, of course, the last alternative is that you could go out for the new construction and the other capital needs that you have today that you see in the future. Okay? Ultimately, the committee came to a unanimous recommendation that we call for a bond election this November not to exceed the amount of $198 million. You will notice that that number matches with the presentation previous to me. And so just to talk a little bit about some of the details, that includes purchase of land, buildings, new construction. We have stated one elementary school, one high school, and I say potential other land and building, $109 million. The reason for that is obviously it's an estimate. We know that there's some inflation in there. We would certainly hope that land doesn't cost as much as we put the number in there, but we don't know what that land cost is going to be until we actually identify the site and get into those negotiations. We have, the last high school that we built was 2005? Liberty, right? But from what we've seen of other school districts who have built high schools recently, the cost to build a high school has risen dramatically over the last high school that we built in this district. So we have a number in there as an estimate with some inflationary costs in there and trying to make sure that we don't run into a situation where at the end, something changes in 3 years from now and we need other new construction money. We have, if we're gonna go out for a bond, we have some of that money in there for that flexibility. Okay, building and site improvements, I mentioned this is a lot of safety and code compliance and ongoing maintenance items. We've spent a lot of money building these buildings. We need to make sure that they stay in good condition, that they don't fall apart, that we don't impact the student learning at those buildings because of maintenance items. That's $49 million. And then equipment, including some technology, student transportation, items that we traditionally have in bonds is another $39 million. Okay? So when we talk about the financial impact of this, right? This is a chart that you may have seen in some other presentations. I'm not 100% sure, but this is showing, this is really the do-nothing alternative. This is taking all the existing bonds that we've had that we were making payments on and the projected remaining 2012 bond authorization as it was stated. If we do not go out for any future bonds, this is a chart of what the tax rate has done and will do if we continue on that same program of bond sales as defined here, okay? And you can see that we kind of peak and we're going to wind down and then level out, all right? So I have the same chart with updated numbers that if we were to go out for the $198 million at a schedule that we've estimated, which front loads 2016 bond usage for new construction while we delay some of the 2012. Then we come back after new construction, finish up the 2012, and then finish the 2016, okay? So all of that is subject to decisions that you would make in terms of when to actually build something and where and how much and all that. But Mr. Hicks made some assumptions of if we were to do it in this way, because we had to come up with something, then the tax rate chart would look like this. You can see that the peak is a little later, and it's a little bit higher in terms of tax rate, and we still have a downward trend in the later years, and we still level out, obviously, at a higher amount because now the total bonds are higher, okay? And again, this is all subject to various assumptions and tax or inflation funds and property values and all of those types of things, as well as whether you spend the money in this particular order or not. Okay? Something that the committee, obviously, we are very interested in balancing the needs of the district with the cost to the community. That's the reason why we're called as citizens of the community to look at this, to vet the possible request, and to decide whether or not it's in the best interest of everyone involved. And one of the things that we discussed, and so this is a potential secondary recommendation for the board if you so choose to take this up, is that you discuss and set a district goal. Now, we've said $2 here. That may not be the number, but decide on what a bond tax rate maximum might be and set that for future conversations. It was something that was brought up, something we discussed. Certainly was not our charge, but we wanted to pass that on to the board if you chose to take that discussion. And then if you did, Mr. Hicks could certainly provide all kinds of detail as to how best to make that decision and set a number. Because it has to be within reason, and of course there's certain factors that the board can't control that would change that tax rate. So you have to be able to balance that flexibility, because you may do nothing and the tax rate changes on you from year to year with home values. Okay? With that, that was a lot of information, and I feel like I went really fast. I apologize for that, but questions, comments, concerns, I am here to hopefully answer everything you have.
Well, thank you, Mr. Kistner. Thank you very much for that. Very good. And your committee as well. Obviously, you're all part of that, the village of financing, so we appreciate your efforts. We start over to my left. Ms. Doan, questions, comments, or anything from Mr. Kistner? And Mr. Hicks, I would imagine, is available as well. Thank you.
Not tonight.
Mrs. Connect?
No, very compelling, especially the growth projections up in the north. Wow.
Yeah.
Very good. And I'm grateful for the work that you did, and it just reaffirms what I believe is that we as a district and a community need to protect the investment that we have, as well as provide safe and functional learning environments for our kids. So thank you.
Good. Ms. Pangarelli?
Yeah, I just wrote out a few questions. The first one, in regards to the new high school and elementary school are projected, how much time was spent with the committee discussing or developing a plan to change the boundaries or fill schools that were under capacity?
So the easy answer to that is 0.
Okay.
And let me explain, though. So it was not within the committee's charge to discuss boundary changes.
Okay.
We certainly did talk about the fact that boundary changes likely will need to occur. We also did talk about what an impact to some boundary changes might be. However, we were not charged with making a decision about boundaries. I and others in the committee, I should say, certainly have opinions about that. But if you remember the discussion when we were looking at Sunset Heights and Liberty High School, the recommendation at that time was that the board call a boundary committee starting in the fall. We certainly would confirm that that is necessary. So that work will need to be done, but we were not able to really discuss that. I will say that, and Mrs. Davey, correct me if I'm wrong because I'm going off memory here, but I do remember that when looking at some of the projections, we made an assumption that unless, from an elementary perspective only, unless we made what I would consider to be drastic boundary changes alone will not solve the elementary enrollment problem in the north.
Okay. And the second one, in looking at the overall effect of like the legacy charter schools or other charter schools on taking students, hopefully not, but away from our district, I just want to just see if you have any idea of what you think the legacy charter school will do.
I'm going to defer to Mr. Hicks if you have any data to support an answer.
Mr. Bullock, if I could just jump in on that one. Obviously, at this point in time, we don't have a crystal ball in relationship to what may happen in this competitive environment. We certainly think we have a competitive product, even more so than others. What we do know is if we do not maintain our facilities and that our classrooms are overfilled and we have poor teaching conditions for our staff, people will leave. And so that would be my quick and easy response, not having a crystal ball, but we do know some of the things that can happen as a result of us not doing what we think we need to do to stay competitive as we are now.
May I add to that, please? That's been heavy on my mind too, especially given the growth in the north. If we don't build schools, and soon, charters will.
And that was another question of,
If I, Ms. Bullock, I'm sorry, Ms. Pingrelli, this is just also, we do have some history in our district that would suggest that thinking is accurate. At one point in time, we were having a similar conversation. We were not able to construct in a timely manner. A charter school by the name of Fletcher Heights opened. For 3 or 4 years. They drew a lot of students out of the Frontier and Coyote Hills area, so that is factual. We won them back, and now it's empty, but the fact of the matter is we do have some history that demonstrates that parents will make that choice.
oh, and just, I don't know if there's any information on, hopefully not, but in your crystal ball, any other charter schools that are out there that are besides Legacy? I don't know if that's Dr. Santarelli question.
President Bullock, members of the board, yes, there are. It's constant. Legacy was actually approved for 2 others. There's one's in our district, one's on the boundary, so it's not just the one that we're seeing construction. They were pre-approved and can move forward as soon as their economic model identifies them to move forward. So it's a constant competition issue that we're constantly battling.
Okay.
May I add something else? Oh, I'm sorry. I
No,
did
go
thought you
ahead.
were finished. I'm glad that this issue came up because I think our community needs to understand that taxpayers are paying for a school, and I got out the map. There are 10 A or B rated elementary schools within 2 miles of that charter school going up. That should make taxpayers mad.
Questions? Yeah, all right, Mr. John again.
Just a couple questions here. You identified that we have a certain bond capacity. Can you kind of just describe if we went forward with the 198, where do we fall within that capacity? Are we close or?
Do you know that number off the top of your head? I have it in a file somewhere, but.
I think it's 239 is the max we can go.
Yeah, so we made sure that the number that we discussed was within that capacity, but I cannot remember exactly what that was. And obviously that capacity too is contingent upon when you're selling and how much you can sell. And so the chart as structured with some estimated sale dates and payments is within that capacity.
But are we taking it to capacity, or are we having any?
No, it's under capacity.
We have some leeway there if future needs arise?
President Bullock, members of the board, just to clarify, capacity is when you actually go to sell the bonds. To ask for the authorization, you can exceed that amount. We are not exceeding that amount in our request for authorization, nor in any projections for the actual sales of the bonds. And I believe, I'm just going to go off the top of my head, which I know is wrong, and I'm sorry, it's roughly around $240 million is what we could probably sell in the next 3 or 4 years, but we're not asking to go to that at all.
Thank you. So would it be kind of safe to say that if we went forward on this at least 3 or 4 years, we would not really want to add another bond on top of this at very, very least?
And that was ultimately a goal, which is why we looked at the time horizon that we did. The goal is to not go out for bonds every 3 years. It's to try to assess what our needs are for capital money over the next, let's say, 6 years, and that's not a perfect number, but what is a longer-term capital need within a time horizon that we have at least some clarity, and try to have that money, which is why there's some inflationary funds in there. There's a new construction. There's a little bit more than we expect to spend because we don't know what might happen in 3 years from now, and try to make it so that we are not in this situation again 2 years from now, let's say, as an example.
Another question is, you did a great job of drawing attention to the growth that's happening up there around Estancia and some other areas. It sounded like when you were presenting, the data that you were looking at was probably a little bit more growth happening up there than the last time presented to us. We kind of feel that's the trend. It's going to just keep getting more and more and more. Is that kind of the feel?
That is the feel, and with, obviously we take a lot of things with grains of salt, but in talking with the developer of Estancia, just asking some general, and he provided some great charts and some projections from economists, not that he created himself, but when you look at those projections, when you look at where we are for home building in Peoria, in that particular zip code, Arizona, the nation, all of those things, the trend is only at this point going up. And something else to note is we're not currently back to what they consider to be a healthy rate. We're still below what they consider to be healthy market building rates.
So with all that, I mean, so the 109 million that you've identified prior, part of that was for land, part of that was for an elementary school, and part of that was for high school. How much does an elementary school typically cost to build, roughly projected?
Currently, right now, around 16, 17 million.
16, 17?
Including the land.
Not including
Yeah,
that.
16, 17 for the
Without
building.
land.
Yep.
And with all the information you provided, and, if we put a high school up there, it's typically, we have a feeder system of 3, 4 plus elementary schools feeding into it. If we just put one elementary school new up there with one new high school, and this kind of projected growth that you shared with me, would it not make sense to possibly have a second elementary looked at to add into this at this point? I mean, it just sounds like the growth is happening faster, and it might make things in the future easier. I'm just asking the question.
We did discuss that, and something that we considered is the fact that for those of you who were around the last time that we did move boundaries and built Sunset Heights, we anticipated that Lake Pleasant Elementary would fill faster than it did. So we actually have half an elementary school in the area already that would need to be filled before we really would have a need for another elementary in that area. And looking at the timing, and obviously the crystal ball is murky, but in looking at that, we as a group made the decision that it was best to not inflate this bond by a second elementary school, because as we get that far out, our confidence in the timing is a lot less.
I just want to pause. We've been talking about this for a long time now, and we are talking about some huge, huge numbers. And so I just want to pause for a minute and remind the people who may be listening and watching, and our Dr. Stifler, we are talking about 37,000 kids. So it's a big school district. Because I think some people hear those large numbers and they think it's just crazy, but we have 37,000 kids.
And growing.
more coming, right.
Right. So really, that was just my big concern there is, are we being short-sighted, or are we not staying up to the speed of the projected growth, especially if it keeps getting a little bit more? And to your point, it's not at a healthy rate yet. Once it does, are we going to be at this point again sooner than we would like to go back out for another bond, or are we just kind of thinking that those two ships are going to pass at the perfect timing or close to the right timing down the road?
Something else that I'll throw out, hopefully I'm not out of bounds here, but part of what I mentioned here as other potential land building, for anyone who's not familiar, you will remember that in the northern part of the district there at Coyote Hills, we do have a second school in a single building, Peoria Traditional School. If there is an opportunity and we have bond money and capacity to do it, you can open capacity within that quadrant, if you will, by moving Peoria Traditional School to another building, its own building, something. So one of the other ideas of having some additional dollars in there, because today, if the perfect opportunity came to us, we have no ability, no authorization as a district to purchase land or build a building or buy a building. We could lease a building in M&O, but we cannot purchase anything because there is no money for new construction. We purposely put some additional dollars in there in case something like that might happen. So that is another option to provide. So when you take that into account, maybe we call it 3/4 of a school is already in existence in the northern part of the district. Now boundaries become a harder conversation. Right. Again, we were not charged with that, so we didn't go down that path very far.
Mr. Bullock?
Thank you.
Just a additional point. Based upon the growth of the traditional school out there, and in my conversations with both Mr. Ballier and Mr. Davis recently, we are going to be at capacity at Coyote Hills to support both of those programs by the start of school next year. So any additional students that we receive during the course of next year will put us over capacity at Coyote Hills. So as early as a year from this fall, we're going to be looking at the potentiality of a problem. And so to your point, Mr. Jonigan, we're certainly going to want to try to get ahead of that.
And that's the whole point of this. And it sounds like you've had that under consideration, and I appreciate you sharing the committee's viewpoint and opinion on that.
Yeah, and I guess I will jump in and make a point. This is only one piece of the solution. This is not the solution. This does not fix all of the problems that you have with capacity and enrollment in the northern part of the district. And remember, 3 to 4 years to build a building, you will need to make other decisions between now and then, which will include boundaries, as we've already talked, and may include other hard decisions for the board to make.
Absolutely.
So,
Just 2 quick comments. And again, these are painfully obvious, but I think they need to be reverberated. We, as a state, up until several years ago, we had additional tax money coming in, higher tax rates, more tax dollars coming into the coffers, so that the state, which was really our tax money, was used to refurbish buildings, which is a normal thing. Every building needs to be refurbished, and to pay for new construction. Okay? That money no longer exists because of economic, because of lowering tax rates, whatever you have. We no longer have our tax money going this way to build new buildings for capacity, which we have to do anyways, a growing district. So now we're having to come the other way and ask citizens, hey, you used to pay more in taxes. We used to have more money to do that. Now you're not paying as much. We're not collecting as much. So we're going to have to ask you this way to help contribute to do something that you used to do this way. So I mean, from a messaging point of view, that's a very, very important point. We used to use our tax money to build it coming through the state. Now it's not. So we have to ask it from the citizens come the other way. It's the same money, in essence, that we have to bond together as a city, as a community, to handle this stuff that we used to handle a different way. So it's not really we're going out and raising a bunch of money to build a bunch of schools. We used to do it anyway. You're paying less than you used to. So we're, in essence, we're not going out and going hog wild trying to raise a bunch of money and build a bunch of fun buildings. That's an important point. We used to get the money to do it. We don't get that money anymore. We are on our own as tax-paying citizens. Nobody wants to pay more than they have to. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, but that is just a statistical fact. The second thing that's very, very important, and I'm glad you brought up about charter schools, let's talk about a business model real quick. A charter school, and I'm all for competition. I don't care where you want to teach your kid. You want it homeschool, parochial school, that's you as a parent. You decide that. We're trying to provide the best opportunity. However, a charter school has an enormous advantage over us because it is a business. They can go with a couple of people with decent credit and good background and good income and a good business plan down tomorrow to a bank and get a loan to build a school. We cannot do that. We cannot go down to Wells Fargo or Chase, our favorite bank, of course, right? We cannot go to Chase with a business plan tomorrow and get a loan as investors to build a building. That's an enormous advantage that charter schools do. That's why they can pop up anywhere they want. And great, competition, welcome competition. But let's be very careful when we start saying, you know, if we don't build capacity, we are opening the door to the natural laws of competition to come in and take PUSD down to where it doesn't want to go. Not being competitive, not having enough, excuse the expression, butts in seats. So we've got to be very careful when we start looking at it and saying, yes, we need to use all the capacity, But if we do not build the capacity that the area calls for, the business aspect of charter schools will come in and pop one up in every city, on every corner, and that's okay. But we have to be okay with that if we vote and go down that direction. So let's be very careful of understanding, too, that charter schools can go get a loan at a bank and build a building tomorrow. We cannot. That is enormous hand tie that we have. A lot of people don't realize. A lot of people think that charter schools, the state gives them money to build schools. They're the same thing as us. They are a business. They can get a loan tomorrow. We can't. And if we're going to stay competitive, and that's the vote eventually, not getting ahead of us, that's the vote. Are we going to stay competitive or not? If you don't want to, okay. If you want to stay competitive, and I hate to use the term competitive in schools, but is the business of education, and we're creating opportunity for our kids for the future, we have to be very careful of how we structure it, how we message, and how we vote to know what we're competing against and deciding if we do want to do it or not. So thank you very much for your presentation.
And then, when the charter school closes, the owners sell the building and put the money in their pockets.
So, you know what, and that's all legal, so I'm not bashing anything, but let's just know that what you're up against, if you want to compete, then let's compete. If you don't want to compete, then don't compete.
So just to close, if there aren't any other
Yeah, no, good.
questions or comments.
No.
Just as a reminder, in terms of, let me get back here to the process. What is left is that you as a board decide whether or not you want to take action. It's not tonight. Tonight was information only.
Right.
You can choose to put it on a future agenda to take action. And just as a reminder, I missed this before, so I want to make sure I get it. Your vote to go out for a bond this year or in the future is only asking for authorization from the taxpayers to sell bonds at a future date. It is not a vote to spend the money tomorrow. You will then decide, based on all things considered, when to sell bonds, when to spend that money, on what and how. And it's at that time that it will impact the tax rate, not today and not this year and not right after the November election. So I just wanted to make sure
Good.
that
Appreciate that clarification. All right, so this is an action item. It says action on here. I know, but they switched action. So it's action item on here, but it's actually an info item.
Mr. Bullock, let me clarify that, just because we've had a little bit of confusion related to that. The agenda item is worded discussion and consideration.
Right.
The item to the right of it, where it describes info and action, was initially listed as info, so there was incongruency between how it was listed and the item to the right. It was information. Now, Ms. McCarty just changed that to action, but my suggestion and recommendation to you is that, based upon that inconsistency, although minor, I would recommend that we table the action until next board meeting so that we have everything clearly defined in a manner that would not be construed as confusing to anyone.
Well, I would think, and thank you for clarifying that. I would agree with that from a different angle. We just got dumped a lot of information here. Thank you to you and your committee. We appreciate it, no matter which way it goes. That was a lot of work, a lot of financial crunching. We need some time to sit on this and chew on it, and ultimately, we're gonna make the decision. We're gonna live and die by that decision. So yes, we need to table that just so we can chew on this and come back. Mr. Hicks?
President Bullock, members of the board, if I could just make one final statement. I just want to thank Mr. Kistner. You can see his command tonight. He did an amazing job leading this team. I did almost nothing except for what he asked me to do, which was, here's our agenda for the next meeting, collect this.
But he did it very well.
Thank you very much. But I appreciate the time. Some of the things I do look for is that people feel free to disagree and really go through a vetting process, that they really truly believe in what we do, and it's a true and authentic process. And he led a very effective process that represented everybody, and everybody was able to speak with all their concerns. So I just want to thank him publicly.
Yeah, I actually sat in on a meeting, and it was well-run, and everyone had an equal opportunity to participate and to agree and disagree. So anyway, I would like to say we just table it for 2 weeks and give all board members a chance to, again, chew on the data, ask questions. Mr. Kistner, are you available for us to send questions, perhaps through Mr. Hicks, if any additional information is needed? Absolutely. Okay, thank you very much. All right.
Mr. Bullock?
Yeah.
And maybe I should wait, well, I don't think I should have to wait till the end where we do new agenda items, but I was intrigued by the proposal, the $2 cap, and so if that could be included in the agenda item next time, I'd appreciate that.
Okay, very good. Any other comments, questions, any rebuttal to the desire to table it? All right, we're going to table this till the next board meeting. Ms. McCarty, if you could make that note, we'd appreciate it. All right, next item on the agenda, number 13. It's a money night tonight. Update on the 2016-2017 district budget. Mr. Hicks, welcome back, sir.
Thank you very much, President Bullock, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Sanarelli, Dr. Cruz, colleagues, and community members. Thank you very much for allowing me to continue to stay up here in a packed house. I'm normally here when it is empty, and I never take that personally. I don't think people leave because I'm presenting, but it is enjoyable to be here. So I'm going to go through our budget process. The point of this is just to give a lot of understanding. I know a lot of this we've already had conversations in just to finalize, but this is the start of, as we're finalizing our budget scenarios, a lot of actions are happening after this time that I want to just kind of summarize where we are, how we got to those decisions right after compensation, as we put together our proposed budget for next year, a lot of these elements. And so this is the time when I kind of, although I've been given the board updates and we had a great all-day retreat in January 12th, this is kind of the culmination of our budget process. And so this kind of summarizes where we are. So as a reminder, we put together essentially 2 budget scenarios. I'll be going through the budget recommendations and quickly going through some of the compensations. And of course, this is all contingent on a state budget as presented as known right now, which is really for the educational part is the Prop 123 is the biggest part of it. There are some others. Obviously, current year funding is still out there. The CTE that we talked a lot about at the beginning was resolved. But of course, we also know, I think I've heard rumors of a move on when reading adjustment. Anything can happen, as evidenced last year at midnight or 10 p.m. So this is all contingent upon kind of where we are and where we understand where we are. The process started back in December, so I would like to, and I thought I saw a couple of these people earlier, our budget team, and really appreciate their time and effort. Basically, every 2 to 3 weeks, we would meet for an hour and a half, give them updates of where, I'll be honest, we start in December with, let's look at our AFR from the previous year and where we ended. We go through almost every fund, or at least quickly look at every fund and see where those balances are and have a quick conversation. Then we start in January with looking at what the governor's budget provided, and then we give budget updates from the legislative side, if we have any additional information, and then we start working through our process. Our process is we look at a baseline budget year, and in that baseline budget year, we have to identify those inputs and those outputs, and we're looking at the delta between this year and next year. And so we'll start with the first budget scenario here if Prop 123 fails. And just putting some of those input assumptions in here is that ADM remains steady. So as we've previously talked about with a charter school in here, and if current year funding goes in, that is a concern and something we have to address from a budgetary standpoint. Inflation increase, so the legislature continues. This is the 3rd year, maybe 4th year of funding inflation. And so we increase our budget for that inflationary factor. Now, there is 3 different numbers out there, so this is one of the few years where it keeps changing. It started at 1.15%, dropped to 1.04%, and then I saw a 0.99, I think it was, or a 9.4% from JLBC, so it continues to change. Normally they put one out and stick with it, so I'm not exactly sure where that is at this point. And then our override increase, that is one of the biggest impacts going forward as our community came together and approved a M&O override increase from 10% to 13%, and so that will be providing additional revenue as well. And so you could see just in sum total, that provides about 7.1 additional budget limit going forward. And so per our budget process, working with our budget team, is we create, and I track it through a spreadsheet, and really we're looking at the delta, and then we start identifying. And so really is the process you could understand. We have to identify all the changes in our programmatic and operational that's going on, and whatever is left through that is what's left for compensation. And so the first big one is benefits. Are we having an increase in health benefits? Is ARS going up? And so we look at that. And so yes, Arizona State Retirement is going up 0.01%. It means a $24,000 increase to the budget, to the Peoria side of it. Very minor, but we do identify all those deltas going on year over year. Health insurance, so that was at a previous board agenda item from our Employee Benefit Trust Board meeting, so there was a slight increase. We kind of called that an investment in that sense, but that has to be identified, and it's really being paid for with the, and that rate not going up in that sense, so it's kind of offset that we're increasing the benefit, but not having a cost impact to the district because of our balances there. We also have to, we look at all departments and we take requests in and needs going forward, and so special ed did identify a large need. Now, if Prop 123 fails, we do not fund what they requested. We've reduced that down, and I believe that's at $240,000 request is what is being recommended for special ed. Part of the other, we look at the attract and retain, some of the other committee work, and we have other discussions with other groups, and one of the top areas this was to increase the sub-pay rates, and this was something that was also talked about in that January meeting with the board of some of those deltas from other districts and some of our concerns, and actually the elimination of the ACR is the alternative contribution rate that's required, and we were, of our comparison districts, the only one that required the retiree to pay half of that, where all the other districts were covering the entire cost of that. And so it was actually a disadvantage for a retiree to actually sub in the Peoria district. They would actually take home less than any other sub. And so we're asking to eliminate that, increase the sub-pay rates. That's a $10 and a $25 rate. And I'm going through this in general because you'll see some of these on other presentations when they ask for the specific reclassifications. Teacher coverage stipend, and so this is as teachers start covering classes, we're actually paying them for all those coverages in that sense. Doubling the elementary student council stipend, unified sports best buddy stipend, and the other big one, and there's a couple other stipends I might have missed. Tom will pick those up on his presentation. The other big one here is the use of our MIPS fund for contingency for staffing and current year funding. So as we're going forward, we do have to try to account for, even though we do not have a crystal ball, it would not be prudent for us to go forward and assume that the current year funding with a charter school and moving into our district, even though our ADM numbers are pretty steady, even growing in the north, we do have to account for charter school moving into our district and then moving to current year funding where we normally hold harmless for 1 year. We will not have that available. And so this, if Prop 123 fails, this is basically saying instead of our M&O budget handling the contingency, we're going to a cash fund. So just to be clear, that's really only a one-time ability to cover that. There's not enough cash in that would cover that in a perpetual manner. So really next year at this time, current year funding is not delayed, and it goes into impact, and it has an impact. There's no guarantee it has a negative impact. It could have a positive impact. Well, technically not a positive impact, but it could have no impact. I'm sorry, misstatement there. The very first thing in our budget process would be identify those positions in that contingency fund that was used this year needs to be addressed the very first thing next year. So it would be top on our list during next year's budget team and budget process. When we go through and identify all of those elements that if Prop 123 fails, it leaves now $3.5 million available for compensation, and per our conversation, how we split it out. We worked with our compensation committees to identify that, and then this is that breakdown of that. And so this essentially, if Prop 123 fails, you're seeing a 2.5% increase is what we'll be recommending, and that will be part of Mr. Hancock's compensation committee presentation. Part of the compensation committee also discussed the stipend, retention stipend. Currently this year, we had a $250 was paid this year. Can't remember if it was the middle or end of July, but over the summer, that $250 was paid for all teachers returning, and they returned their contract in time. This year, it's a little bit different, as Dr. Santarelli was asking. We probably should do a little bit more in this area. And so with that, the compensation committee for the certified staff has recommended starting with a minimum of $250, but it can go all the way up to $1,300 per teacher, but $250 minimum for everybody, and then it jumps to $600 for those with more than 5 years experience in the district, and then every 5 years it goes up an extra $100. And then also the classroom site fund. During our process, we found out what the new classroom site fund increase is, and those that saw that press release or that information, You might have noticed that that fund increased 1.5%, but you can see our raises are going up 7.5%. So we've had a few conversations over our presentations and dialogue. We had some bigger balances in our classroom site fund, and there's been questions from the board, when does that go to the teachers? Here's when you see that. So the revenue in that fund actually is only increasing 1.5%, but we're increasing the amounts to teachers by 7.5%. That is because we have bigger balances. Now, some of them could be a concern, is that sustainable? Well, we'll see what next year's sales tax and other revenues generate. But, so it could only be 1 year. It's unknown at this point because you don't know what next year's revenues are from state trust land and from the sales tax. But it is important to understand that we do treat this completely separate. This is for the teachers. It goes only to the teachers, and so it's going to go up and down with and for the teachers, but it is their money. And so when there is a greater role, carry forward a balance, it's going to go to them in the next budget year that we have the ability to give it to them. And so that was that. Any questions if it fails? I know that is somewhat high level, but that is the process that we've been going through for the last 4.5 months. Now, if Prop 123 passes, similar things, ADM remains steady, inflation increase, override increase, but now we have the Prop 123 increase, and this now moves the dollar amount up to approximately $14.5 million in additional funds. All the same elements are in play, except for the special ed services, instead of increasing their budget by $240,000, goes up to $400,000. And then we also put in 2 additional things, some additional funds to try to assist with the custodial operations. It is a huge concern, not just from the budget team, but as we pull together all admin, it's a constant conversation, and much to some people's dismay, it is not a full, complete fix. We're really trying to make it work in the best situations that we have possible. So this is what I would call an incremental improvement that we're going to try to do. We believe we'll get some improvement through increased accountability that we're working on putting in place. But we do appreciate all the sites' patience as we work through this process and try to make it as best as possible for our sites and for our teachers. The next is also a transfer budget on a regular, ongoing basis to put some money in for instructional resources on an ongoing. And so this puts about $750,000, transferring it back over into the capital sense to provide some additional instructional resources. That'll be worked with the curriculum instruction team and Dr. Cruz. That could be pooled and wait 1, 2, 3 years, 4 years, whatever it is. It will be just an ongoing allocation to them. They'll have to identify their greatest need and start moving forward on that. But that is about $750,000. It continues the teacher coverage stipends, the other stipends, and I'm sorry, I knew I left off one. It was the National Board Certified Teacher Stipend. And so this is for those teachers that go through that rigorous process of earning a National Board certificate. This provides a $1,500 stipend for each one of those. And then there's also one of the things that was requested to bring back is department chairs. There were some concerns about how the chairs are used, and so really we're changing this to leadership stipends in a sense, like almost leadership cadres that each site has their own, and so this provides approximately $3,000 to each elementary school and about $10,000 to each high school. There's an expectation that the K-12 administrators will work to create some models that the principals will be able to identify to help identify, so that one of our concerns was if you leave it all up and everything's different, somebody at one school could be doing some work that's not getting paid for, and somebody at another site is doing it and they're getting paid for, and there could be some conflict or tension there. And so we're going to lean on the K-12 administrators to come up with some models that the principals would select, and then they would implement those leadership teams, and we would pay that stipend to those teachers for fulfilling those duties. Going through all of that, after you pull off all that, it leaves $9.6 million. And then if Prop 123 passes, the applicable raises to the base salary is as the 6.81% for each of those groups. And you can see below there the retention stipend stays the same, and so does the classroom site fund. Now, one of the things we talked about on the January meeting is the way I continue to present this as we focus on the 16-17. If Prop 123 passes, we actually get funding in this year. And so by looking at permanent raises in 16-17, you have that gap of what do we do with the money this year. That is one-time money. That is the $7.2 million coming in that would come in this year, probably in June. We would roll that over to the 16-17 budget, but we would still look at that as what are we going to do with that $7.2 million. We started off very strongly, or I started off very strongly, looking for a 50-50 split of 50% for compensation, 50% for instructional resources. We know our need is great in both areas. At the end, the committee pushed, I willingly went to, but the committee really asked to move more than 50%, so we moved to 60-40% of that one-time money. And so that 50%, or that 60% going to compensation leaves, moves it to 3.18% and 1.5.2% for admin and a 3.18% for certified staff. Now, these were all the same amounts, but working through Dr. Santarelli, took it to the executive team and said, really, we should do a little bit more for teachers and classified. And so we looked at that, and so this is adjusting that as a one-time, these are one-time compensation, one-time payments. It's not built into their base pay that will be paid out throughout the whole year. It will be paid at one time, and it is these percentage of the base. And then that leaves, that would leave approximately 2.9 million, I believe, for instructional resources, or 2.8 plus, to move into the instructional resources budget to go for curriculum instruction to recommend the best uses of those for those instructional resources. Here's just the summary, so we could see it, and I think that was it. So I will stand for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hicks. We appreciate that. We'll start to my right this time. Ms. Pangarelli, questions? Oh, actually, sorry, I started with you last time first. So you get a... All right, Ms. Stone, we'll start with you. Questions or comments, concerns? Oh. Sorry, Curtis, I had two of them on the same one. I apologize. I was looking for two different ones. My apology. All right, we do have a speaker. Curtis Elwood. Elward, I should say your name correctly. If you want to speak to this, you get your 3 minutes. Ms. Pangarelli, our official timekeeper. That's right, Kathy. Who's got the iPad? The iPhone. Okay. We'll wait till that officially starts up. There are some technical requirements. Thank you for being here tonight. And I apologize for that. I had two things on one. I just looked and saw 14.
No worries.
You can flog me like my board member friends do when I make mistakes.
Well, thank you, President Bullock, members of the board, Dr. Santarelli, members of staff, and Mr. Hicks. I appreciate the chance to come before you. Many of you have received some more in-depth and detailed information in email presentation. And I guess in terms of this budget process, we've heard a lot about the need to continue to invest and the need to continue to stay competitive. And our buildings are crumbling, but our human capital is waning as well. And our teachers are bearing the brunt of that. And the numbers in our annual financial reports over the last 15 years are very clear about where resources have been diverted from, where the pie has shrunk the most, and while other areas have maintained constant, and that's been in regular ed instructional salaries. So in terms of my comment about the budget process and this entire large perspective, I notice that we make a lot of, we say that maintaining, attracting, and retaining and compensation and salaries are our top priority, but really they're at the very bottom of the decision-making chart. We go through a process which determines all these other needs, which are very real and valid, but in the end, then we start to think about what's left in terms of how we compensate. And I think that if you have looked at the data that I've given you, there are some really, really important things that you need to know. This is the Auditor General's financial report for dollars to the classroom from 2002. 2002 is quite a long time ago, and at that point in time, our average annual teacher salary was $39,961. The state average was $39,973. We were on par with the state. The last year's Auditor General report, in that time since 2002, our average annual teacher salary has risen by about $450 to $40,399. The state average is up $6,000, $46,008. Our peer districts, those are the ones that are the exact same sorts of student population size, unified districts. Our peer districts are up $4,660 in average annual teacher salary over that same time. When you start taking that to the teacher in the classroom and stack $6,000, $6,000, $6,000, you know, in five years, I taught my first couple years for free at that point. I'll bring more in the next agenda item.
All right. Thank you, sir. Just also a note before I get to my fellow board members. If you want to speak, we'd love to hear from you. These green slips you're probably all familiar with. It's your ticket to 3 minutes of discussion or talking. And the rules are that we can't respond to it, just so you know, unless something obscure, but we're not allowed by open meeting law and all that good stuff to respond to it, but we greatly appreciate your information and the research that you do. But please, if you want to speak, we'd love to hear from you. So just FYI, I believe there's green slips out in the lobby. There's a little stack. You can go up there. I'm sure there's a pen out there as well. Thank you. All right, now to my fellow board members. Ms. Stone.
I do have a question. It seemed to me that earlier when we went through comparison of salaries with admin and classified and certified, that our admin were paid pretty well commensurate with other districts, with what is accepted. So what I want to know is why are they getting a raise when our certified are so far behind? Why is that money not going to fix that gap?
President Bullock, members of the board, on January 12th, as we went through the data, I believe my recollection was that it was principals and assistant principals were in and around the median or near our competitive districts or comparison districts average. The district office administration was not. They were under. But I think as we had through the conversation that we had as a board, the conversation was we treat everybody the same. We are all in it together. And so there was no consensus from the board to say, let's carve out one group over the other and cut them. I know I talked about heading into, I know I mentioned this with our compensation staff and our budget team. We can make differentiations between the groups, but I was really trying to make our life and payroll easier, that whatever changes made within the group is done the same. But we did talk about, can it be different between? It can be different between, but on January 12th, on reviewing my notes with the board, at no point was I hearing a consensus that's let's not. I know board members have brought it up, but I did not hear a consensus or that was the will of the board to do that.
Ms. Stone? Are there any other questions?
No.
Okay.
Not right now.
Okay. We have plenty of time. Go ahead. Ms. Connect.
Well, I expressed my concerns in January, and unfortunately, the board has not had an opportunity to revisit this topic until tonight. So we're presented with a like it or leave it thing tonight, and I don't think that is necessarily all the choices that we have. Making hard decisions is easier when you know what your goals are. And this district's goals have been, for the last at least 3 years, to attract and retain teachers. And I am not convinced that this budget proposal is the correct way to do that. And I'll stop there, but I'll probably have something else to say.
Ms. Pangarelli?
Well, I do share the concerns of other board members. in terms of the teachers being far below other districts, surrounding districts. And I know everything right now is an even percentage. And I know I'll just throw out there, if we were to hold, or I know a lot of companies will hold people at a certain pay scale over 100,000 or over whatever, and they get frozen until the others catch up. That's just one idea. But I agree with Mrs. Connect. We haven't really talked about this in depth since last January.
And just an item, just to know, this is an info item.
I know.
It's not, just to clarify, okay, it's not an action item, this one, at least this particular agenda item isn't, so we're free to discuss and even, bring back in the future, so. Oh, sorry, Mr. John again.
I'm going to hold right here. I think everything that's been said is right on, and I'm just going to hold for the future item.
Okay, great, all right.
I do
Yeah,
have something.
you bet.
I will disagree with you, Mr. Hicks, as much as I like you, and you know I do. We don't treat every group equally, and that exactly is what Mr. Elward's point is, that since before the recession and through the recession, the percentage, and I brought video. I brought the video that we were all sent to show the public if that's the desire of the board, but we don't have to do that. The point is in a given size pie, admin and classified have stayed pretty much consistent as a percentage of the entire budget. But general instruction has shrunk consistently over the last 14 years. And so when we say we treat everybody the same, that is not indicated by the data. And I think what I hear at least some of the board members saying is that was due to a whole number of different circumstances put upon us by the state and the economy. But we have an opportunity now to make it better, to start moving it in the right direction and making some reparation to some of that squeezing that happened to our classroom teachers.
Especially regarding the compression issue. I really want to address that.
So my understanding was that the compensation groups or the budget groups were given the percentage numbers that we were given in January, which was 8% for admin, 68% for certified, and 24% for classified, which would be then divvied up within those categories for compensation. One of the graphs that Mr. Elward created to help us understand this issue, he is a great math teacher, I understand, takes that pie chart and shows how PUSD's levels of teacher compensation has gone down over the last decade or more. And one of our very near neighbors school districts, Deer Valley, has done a better job of protecting the money that goes into the classrooms and the teachers. Deer Valley, because it was suggested to me that I not just complain, but that I offer a solution. Deer Valley actually has a very slight adjustment to those percentage rates. Instead of 8, it is 6 for administration. Instead of 68%, it's 70 for certified, and the classified remains the same at 24. So if that's something that the board would like to consider doing, that may be a way that we can move forward.
I'll chime in as well. This is an area that let me step back real quick. I just want to make sure, and I know as a board members, and we all talk and we disagree and we agree, but I want to make sure it's like really clear that I don't want to get in a competition of who loves teachers more. And I say that not jokingly, it's true. I don't want to get in a competition of who loves one group more than the other. Okay, I love teachers selfishly because you took care of my kids and you still are. I love administration because you take care of my kids and support the teachers, and you still do. I love bus drivers. I love food service people because, quite honestly, if the kids don't get to school, teachers know when to teach. So I just want to be careful that we know that we all love teachers, and unless we have the best teachers, this place is going down the toilet. However, as long as we have the best bus drivers and the best food service people and the best payroll people and purchasing people and benefits people, we're going to have issues that reverberate in different areas. They may not be felt for a while. So having said that, I just want to make sure that there's no competition here. Who loves what group more than the other? We love all of you the same, or else it makes our job miserable as parents. Remember, we're all parents, too, that have kids in the district or have had kids in the district. I slightly disagree. It's been, it's made publicly. And again, we're all from different areas of life and have different businesses during the day. I'm all for, if you remember, 2 years ago, we had we split it. We did administration 1% and certified 2%. We did give the nod. We're not talking a lot of money, unfortunately. So this is my concern, loving everybody the same, that we don't keep going to one group, and there may be some incongruencies. There are incongruencies. I don't know all the details of why there are incongruencies over the years, but I just want to, my feeling is, we gave a little bit here, and this time we need to level out and give everybody the same. As more money comes for teachers, and I'm hoping that the legislature does what they're supposed to do, I'm hoping 1, 2, 3 passes, there's other opportunities. So yes, everyone needs to be paid market rate and above for what they do for PUSD, but I get concerned when we don't take care of, because remember, administration also, yes, it's DAC people, but it's also, remember from this, that we got in this big argument with the state on how they're classifying administration. You're putting too much into administration. Well, thanks for reclassifying. Now coaches are, dance instructors, the parapro librarians, coaches, speech pathologists, psychologists, those are all now administrators. So those are all extremely vital to the classroom. Yes, the teachers create the magic, but the magic needs support as well. So I just want to be careful that with this limited amount of money, if we're talking $50 million, okay, I think I may have a different tune. But for a very, very small amount of money, I want to make sure that we, again, administrative, classified, bus drivers, food service, everybody, they've been frozen as well over the years too. So I want to make sure that we're treating everybody, I mean everybody, fairly. Sometimes fair is we help out one area, and sometimes fair is the small amount of money, everybody gets a bump. Let's keep focusing and pushing. If you've noticed, over the last 2 years, there's been a groundswell of public support for public education that, and I'm going to kind of quote Dr. Senator, because him and I have had discussions ad nauseum about this, what's it been like in the days gone by. There's been a groundswell that I haven't seen in the last 20 years supporting district public education. That has, if you pay attention with the district or the legislature and the governor, they blinked last year. Did you notice that? They came in saying, too bad, we're going to cut money from everybody. And then we came out in force and they blinked. Because of that, we're all getting a little bit more money this year. I don't think that would have happened if there wasn't this enormous groundswell of support. So there's 2 ways to make this happen. We're going to be divvying up a very small fraction of dollars, but the real charge, don't forget, is to keep pressuring so that we can all then enjoy a larger pot of money that everybody feels good about going forward. So I don't want to, I had to say that because we're going to disagree on stuff respectfully, but I just want to make sure you know that there are all aspects of this that all need help, but I can be careful about divvying up a small little piece of money incorrectly. So having said my piece. All right, so that's an info item. Next item on the agenda, Mr. Hicks, I believe you're still with us. Number 14, and I didn't have any more speakers for 13, just making sure I don't want to bypass anybody. Nope, all 14. All right, next item on the agenda is discussion and consideration of approval of compensation recommendations for the 2016-2017 school year. Mr. Hicks and Mr. Hancock. Thank you, Mr. Hancock.
President Bullock, governing board members, Dr. Santarelli, thank you very much. I'm extremely excited to come before you tonight and propose recommended salary increases for all employee groups. I know that we've been discussing administrative staff and certified staff and classified staff, but this recommendation does also include compensation increases for our substitute teachers, which have not actualized an increase in several years. And the process for this recommendation, there is a compensation committee for certified staff, for administrative staff, and for classified staff that met together and looked at the dollar amounts that were available and did come to a consensus on the proposed increases that are included in this presentation that we'll go through for each employee group. So I believe Mrs. Connect referred to the graphic with percentages for the salaries across the district at 8%, 68%, and 24%. And I know that we've seen this graphic before, and you can see the sliver there for the new budget for salary increases, benefits, and new programs. Are there any questions from the board on this particular graphic? So the first group of increases is for our certified staff members. You can see that the compensation committee recommended a flat percentage increase for the 16-17 school year. An important note is without Proposition 123, it's a 2.5 base salary percentage increase, and it is able to be funded because we were able to pass the M&O override. With the Proposition 123 passing, it would be a 6.81% base salary increase that the compensation committee did recommend, as well as the 2.5% is still there being funded by the M&O override. What this causes is we have two different scenarios. We have the without Proposition 123 and with Proposition 123. So on our employee contracts with governing board approval, we will have two contract amounts. So certified staff members will receive a contract that has a without Prop 123 and a with Prop 123 dollar amount.
Just one question, and maybe this is a really naive question. Are we confident on the numbers that will come through if 123 passes? Just so it gels in my head.
President Bullock, members of the board, in working with Mr. Hicks, I believe that we are quite confident in the numbers, and these percentages will work out for us.
No surprises, that's awesome.
And then with the one-time money that Mr. Hicks did mention in his presentation, with Proposition 123, the recommendation from the compensation committee was a 3.05% one-time payment to certified staff. But as Mr. Hicks mentioned, the administration, working with Dr. Santarelli, lowered the administrative staff one-time money to 1.52% to add an increase into the certified staff one-time money. For the classified staff increases, it looks very similar. The compensation committee, the classified staff compensation committee recommended a flat percentage increase for the 16-17 school year, which does, with the classified staff, it's a little bit different because there are classified exempt employees and classified hourly employees. And if you remember at the last governing board meeting, the salary schedule for the classified hourly staff and exempt salary staff was approved by removing those max and the caps on those salary schedules. So all classified employees will be able to receive an increase going forward with governing board approval. So the 2.5% that's funded by the override would be added either to the hourly rate or to the salary, depending on the employee situation. And then again, with Proposition 123, it's a 6.81% increase recommendation to the pay, and then the M&O override is funding a portion of that, and then also Proposition 123. And then the one-time money for the classified staff, if Proposition 123 does pass, again would be the 3.18%. That the lowering of the administration group to the 1.52 was able to increase the classified staff from 3.05 to 3.18 as well. And the compensation committee for classified staff did recommend holding this payment with the passage of Prop 123 until December, because paying classified staff in arrears, the hourly employees for days that they've worked, does cause paychecks in December and the winter break to go down a little bit because they're not working the days. So that was the recommendation from the committee. And then the Administrative Compensation Committee recommended a flat percentage increase for the 16-17 school year as well. Very similar numbers and setup, but an important note on the administrative staff, I did mention earlier that classified hourly and classified exempt, we did remove those salary caps at the last board meeting, and the certified schedule does not have maxes or caps on it either. But the administrative salary schedule and placement schedule does still have a maximum salary for all administrative positions. So not all administrative staff will be able to actualize the 2.5% base increase or the 6.81% based on with or without Proposition 123, simply because there is still a cap on the administrative salary schedule. And then the one-time money from Proposition 123 passing that was mentioned earlier, the Compensation Committee did recommend a 3.05% payment here for the administrative staff if 123 passes. But again, working with Dr. Santarelli, that percentage has been moved to 1.52% to allow for more money to be put into the classified and certified pots of money for the one-time payment. And Mr. Hicks also mentioned the certified teacher retention stipend for teachers that do return their contracts within the 15 business days that they are statutorily allowed to consider their employment. And the compensation committee recommended a tiered retention stipend for the 16-17 school year. And you can see, based on the years of experience, it goes from ranges of 5 years, it goes from $250, and then from 5 to 9.99 years, it goes up to $600, and then every band of 5 years, it goes up $100 up to a max of $1,300. And these are the substitute teacher increases that we are proposing and recommending for governing board approval. Currently, the 15-16 daily rate for substitutes is $85 a day, and the district is paying 50% of that alternate contribution rate, and the substitute is paying the other 50% of that rate. The proposal for the 16-17 daily rate is $95 a day, and the district paying 100% of that ACR payment to ASRS, the Arizona State Retirement System. For a long-term substitute teacher, this year, the 15-16 is $100 a day, again with 50% of the ACR being covered by the district and 50% by the substitute. And we are proposing and recommending $125 a day with the district paying 100% of that alternate contribution rate. Reason for that is because in the compensation comparison that we reviewed in January, our substitute pay was not keeping up with surrounding districts, and we were also losing subs because we were requiring retired substitutes to pay the ACR and lowering their pay, as Mr. Hicks also mentioned. And with that, I do stand for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hancock. I'll start with my right this time. Ms. Pangarelli, questions, comments? Okay. Mr. Jonigan?
We talk a lot in the percentages, and I guess I would like to have that brought into more of a dollar base for me, if you could. How much, when we talk about a percentage of 6% going to every category, classified, administration, certified, how much are we talking about in each one of those? What does that represent in dollars?
President Bullock, Mr. Jonigan, and just to clarify, are you asking the percentage of the dollars that the compensation committee had to work with in each group?
How much of a raise they'll get? Yeah, how much of a raise that group would get? How much of the overall millions would be divided into classified? How much would be divided into administration? How much would be divided into certified?
Yeah.
What would be different for each person? Average.
Right, but of the entire budget, there's a certain portion. That big pool gets divided into smaller pools. What are those smaller pools? Does that make sense?
Mr. Jonigan, just to clarify, are you referring to the amount that each group is receiving as part of that? Okay. So for the certified staff at the 6.81% increase, that's a total dollar amount of $6,551,038.
I'm sorry, say it one more time.
$6,551,038.
And that was for classified?
That was for certified.
Certified, I'm sorry.
And then for the classified staff, it's $2,312,131. And for the administrative staff, it's $770,000. It's $770,710. And that was the 6.81% numbers. For the, without Prop 123 at the 2.5%, for certified staff, it is $2,408,552. For classified staff, $850,077. And for administrative staff, $283,359.
Thank you. I guess the reason I was going down that exercise is, if we're talking, I mean, how much, and just hear me out here, everybody, if we were to just take one of the pools and zero it out and add it to the other pools, are we talking massive percentage changes to those pools? Or are we, I mean, I hate to do math on the fly here, but Do you know what I'm saying? Is it going to make a significant, if we take $770,000 from admin, just for an example, and we try to divide that in and put that all into certified, is it going to change the percentage that much? And if so, how much, like on an average basis? Broad brushed, I know, but just trying to get a feel for what this impact is.
President Bullock, members of the board, it depends. I mean, I could run the numbers. Like if you tell me, is that the one you want? Zero out.
I'm just asking, does it make that much of a difference overall percentage-wise if you move those dollars?
I mean, I always look at it as it makes two differences. The one that you're now giving zero to is feeling nothing, as I just mentioned, state retirement going up and other expenses going up. But then you'll have the opposite, the other side of it going up. You would then add the 750 onto that, which would add maybe another 0.75%. I'm just spitballing, don't.
Absolutely, that's all I'm looking at here.
Maybe another 0.75%.
And what would that mean to a classified or certified?
I'm sorry, I was giving it all to certified.
Okay, just for certified, just for example.
It would mean 0.75%. So instead of 6.81%, you're looking at 7.8%-ish.
And
or 7.7.
On average, what would that roughly? I mean, I know there's all different
The
salary
average teacher,
issues.
as Curtis has pointed out, is $40,000.
So
you would take 3/4 of that, so $300, or roughly $380 per teacher.
So I guess the point of that exercise for me personally, and for anyone else that was willing to listen or entertain me, are we talking like a lot of money when we say we're treating everyone equal, or we're giving everyone the same 6.81%? If we started messing with percentages, are we really making a massive difference to any one group, or other than who gets some taken away from? So I guess that's what I was trying to put in my head. How much are we really, of an impact are we looking at across the board here, other than a percentage? Because, you know, a percentage to someone that makes 100,000 versus someone that makes 20,000, it's you know, completely different ball game to them. So, please.
Well, you really touched on what I was thinking about, and that is, you know, we say equal raises when we say 6.8%, but it's not equal raises when you have different people at different bases. And I worked some numbers out just on a 6%. If you make $40,000, a 6% raise is another $2,400. But if you make $60,000, that's $3,600. And that gets compounded year after year after year. So while I really do appreciate the sentiment Dr. Santarelli made to talk about a one-time stipend, I don't think that's nearly as valuable to our employees than raising the base, because that's what grows year after year. It's not an equal raise when you're starting from different places.
You have another question? Okay. Ms. Stone?
I'm in agreement with this. We have not thoroughly discussed this issue. We don't have all the numbers, and I'm very disappointed that we have not made a comprehensive and thorough check into this before being presented with these options. I just want to say that.
No, I understand. Also, just from general board, the packet's made available about 5 days ahead of time, so these numbers are available too.
That's, yes,
Well,
what I'm
just
talking
saying.
about.
No, I understand, but I'm just saying that the numbers are made available to us a week ahead of time or 5 days. But you're talking about discussing as a group.
Right.
Okay, I just want to clarify that. Okay, Ms. Stone, before I leave, any other questions or comments? Okay. Ms. Connect, you said you had some other additional issues or questions?
No, I just said what I wanted to. Oh, I did say, I do like raising the sub pay. That's really cool. And I don't want to mess with it this year, but something we might want to consider next year, if we're doing signing bonuses, I saw that it was from lowest, based on experience, to highest. We lose teachers in those first 3 to 5 years. We might want to goose up that very first category just a little bit to get people who are on the fence about staying in the career to do that.
President Bullock, Mrs. Connect, that definitely was discussed by the Certified Compensation Committee, and they came to the consensus to tier it the way it is this year, but certainly that is open for discussion in the future.
Okay, I like that too. I like the signing.
Okay. Well, I've said my piece in the last one, and it stands. I think this time, this is my opinion, because A, we're dealing with such a small amount of money, and B, we did have some adjustments last time, that we keep at the same amount. And I understand your point of someone makes 100,000 versus someone makes 30,000. For argument's sake, they get more, but of course they do.
A lot more,
Agreed.
and
But
compounded over years.
right, but of course that's the way it works everywhere. So I mean, and again, there's no disagreement on who we all like, but of course.
I wish you would quit couching it like that, because that has nothing to do with it.
Well, I'm not trying to make an issue. I'm just saying is that I want to make sure everyone understands that no matter how we talk or whatever, we all value everybody.
Correct.
So that's all. So I'm not couching anything. But obviously, I don't agree the same way you do and some of my other fellow board members, and that's just the way I think from a logical point of view. Of course, someone who makes, that's the same way it works in the business world. Businesses give percentage raises all the time. Someone who's making 100,000 obviously gets more money than someone who makes $20,000, of course. So that's pretty normal. All right, so any other questions or comments? I want to obviously give everybody full time, and obviously we a heated discussion, so we want to make sure everybody gets full time to answer any questions or ask, or Dr. Santarelli or Mr. Hicks, Mr. Hancock, anything else, or request more information. We want to be fair. Dr. Santarelli?
Yeah, Ms. Bullock, certainly have some comments I'd like to share with the board related to this topic, but I do believe you have some speakers that have asked to address, so I'll reserve my comments until the end.
All right. Thank you very much. In no particular order, I'm going to name who's first, 3 minutes, and I'll say who's on deck to use our baseball theme. And our official timekeeper, Ms. Connect, let us know when you're ready.
Ready.
Okay, so up first is Gail Miller, and then Dana Matusik is on deck. So is Gail, there you are. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. President Bullock, members of the board, Dr. Santarelli, Dr. Cruz. I am Gail Miller, and I am the proud principal of Oasis Elementary School, and I come tonight as a member of the Peoria Principals Association. And we want to thank you for your continued support and our strong relationship with this board, and we hope with our new superintendent. We are blessed to work and collaborate with professionals in a highly effective school district. The leadership from our superintendent and boards have always supported the work that we do. Budgets and compensation are some of the hardest issues we face in education. There is a sense of what we do as educators. Every day is important and is essential, but doesn't need to be valued necessarily monetarily. There is an impression that educators work just 9 months a year, and our legislators have not felt the need to support district public education with additional funding. With a hope and wish that Proposition 123 passes, this will provide much-needed support to our schools. Principals and assistant principals are teachers who have been recognized as your strong instructional leaders. PUSD is blessed to have highly effective leadership teams. Dr. Larry Lazat, a renowned author and researcher, has said highly effective schools are determined by 7 correlates of effective schools. The first 4 are instructional leadership, having a clear and focused mission, providing a safe and orderly environment, and creating a climate of high expectations. These essential elements are provided by your administration and staff. This is not work done in isolation. It does take a village, and together we work to be an effective school and a place where children can come and grow. All staff member salaries have been frozen, certified, classified, and administration. We all are at school early, and we all stay after hours to support sports, our students, our concerts, our dances, our festivals. We all give our time to the students and communities we serve. We all go to Saturday festivals, and we all go to summer workshops. We all plan for smooth transitions. We all clean campuses, provide the hot lunches, and essentially work magic to make our schools run seamlessly and be an inviting place to work and learn. We take on the challenges of charter schools, competing with the work and the services we provide. We are advocates for our students and our parents. We are sought out by our communities for support and services when there is no one else to help them. We provide food banks, clothing, seasonal support. A principal is no more than a teacher who has been selected in a leadership role to facilitate in the educational process. A school cannot run without support help. Thank you for providing equitable compensation for all entities and how you support all entities of PUSD.
Thank you very much. Okay, Ms. Matusek, and then if you hold just 1 second, on deck, I'm sorry, I'm not great at cursive, and if I slaughter your name, please correct me and forgive me. Landa, say it? I would never have guessed that, but thank you. You're on deck. Appreciate that. Okay, thank you for waiting.
Problem. Good evening, President Bullock, members of the board, Dr. Santarelli. I'm Dana Matisek, the principal at Desert Valley. Members of the board, excuse me. I'm here to share some thoughts for your consideration as you contemplate a decision regarding compensation. First, I ask that you not divide a unified district. It takes every single PUSD employee to get every student every day to their tomorrow. We are all teachers. District administrators grow site administrators and parents. Our site administrators are growing teachers, support staff, parents, and students. Our teachers and support staff are growing our students. The impact of the past several years' budget crisis has hit us all equally. It has been previously shared that our administrator salaries are comparable to other districts. However, please note that other district administrator profiles and responsibilities may not look the same. Do a majority of their administrators have 10, 20, 30-year loyalties to their districts like we do? They may have K-3 schools, K-5 schools, K-6 schools, not the preschool through 8th grade elementaries like we see. They also may have the 10.5-month contracts. Our administrators work 12 months, 24/7 because of the on-call all-night factor, to supervise, protect, maintain, and grow hundreds of staff members, thousands of students, and multi-million-dollar facilities, as well as persuading the community to pass a recent override, making this increased compensation possible. Not one employee group could do without the other. We humbly ask you conclude to increase compensation to all employee groups, administrators, teachers, classified and support staff with equal percentages. We're a great unified district. Please don't divide us. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right, thank you, Landa. I'm not going to try your last time again. I'm sorry. One bad way is enough. And then on deck is David Snyder. Thank you for being here.
President, members of the board, Dr. Santarelli, Dr. Cruz, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm very passionate about my position as principal of an elementary school and serving the district for 18 years. So forgive me if my voice varies. What does an administrator do? We work 12 months of the year, 10 to 11-hour workdays, on call 24/7, average 3 extra duty activities per week, no prep period, no scheduled lunch. We are responsible for the growth of minimally 475 students and 70 staff members annually. What does a day look like for a principal? I'm just going to go over today, and this was not even kind of close to one of my roughest days. So the cell phone starts going off about 5 o'clock with people running late, duties that need to be covered, no substitutes for classes, so we have to figure out how to arrange that. 7:15, I had a RED meeting, which is a special education meeting to determine if a student needs to be evaluated. Before the meeting was even over, we were told that the Wi-Fi was down, so we had to figure out how 2 grade levels were going to do AZ merit testing because they were testing on laptops. Then we had to meet with a team to review our student need and data, trying to figure out how to provide summer school interventions for at least 100 needy students with funding for only 50. Talked with a parent over an incident report, conferenced with a teacher regarding instruction and feedback, talked with a parent regarding medical concerns and how to make it through changes in puberty of her severely disabled son, analyzed teacher requests for end-of-the-year supplies, consulted with AP on discipline of sexual harassment, dealt with an adult male through trying to gain access to students, which he did not have access, so we had to follow a protocol and contact the legal parent. Had a meeting regarding the need for a working scrubber, because we had a 45-year-old scrubber and we couldn't get the floors clean. A third grader attempting suicide by taking his shoelaces off, trying to choke himself to death. We had to call impact and call the parents. Walking a 50-pound box of food from our pantry to give to a family in need because they didn't have food to eat tonight. Lastly, although I'm sure I've missed several things that I accomplished today, attending a board meeting to hopefully open the minds and hearts to the value of an administrator. Administrators have suffered many cuts over these years. We have been frozen. We got our instructional interventionist cut from us, so that's why we have to deal with the suicides and the sexual harassment and the bullying things that just doubled our workload. We were cut to a half-time AP for at least 2 of my last 6 years as principal. It is incomprehensible to me on how there would even be a discussion of not considering giving equitable raise to all employee groups. And the 100,000 keeps getting mentioned, not even anywhere close to 100,000. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, let me get that on deck. So David, thank you for being here, Mr. Snyder. And Curtis, you are on deck, sir.
President
Thank you.
Bullock, members of the board, Dr. Santarelli. My name's David Snyder. I'm a principal at Cotton Bowl Elementary School and also a parent within this district. I would like to point out a few things. If I've made anything in my reputation in this district, it is that I am passionate about defending teachers. And if I thought for a moment that this was unfair, I would be no part of it, okay? When you look at numbers like administrative salaries, you need to look at something like the per diem index, okay? That's a factor. How many days we work versus how many days other principals work. You also have to look at the experience index. We are loyal. I would like all administrators in this room that have been here for 10 years or more to stand up. When you pay for loyal people that have been here for a long time, the experience index costs. If you're comparing to a district that has a turnover rate every 3 years, that's significant. I'd like to talk about family, legality, and loyalty. For as long as I've worked in the district, which is approaching 27 years at this point, Peoria has been a family. And in this family, leadership has historically gone to great efforts to equally share the rewards and financial burdens as money available dictated. Raises, pay cuts, furlough days, they've been enjoyed or suffered in a manner that was equitable to the various groups in the district. That is a historical precedent in this district and has long been practiced with sound reasoning behind it. We're a family, and in a family, those of us that are making big decisions need to be careful not to play favorites. When I was principal or president of PPA years ago, when we were doing these cuts, I would say that I fought just as hard to preserve the rights as the teachers, the classified, the custodians, the bus drivers, so that the cuts were equal. And that's something I would ask be remembered. As a parent, I must be fair to my children. Though they are different, and though they do different things, as a good father, I can't favor one over the other without causing hurt, resentment, and discord. As board members, you're often charged with making tough decisions, much like I have as a father. As a board member, if you make a decision that is unfair to one specific group, you'll cause hurt and resentment and discord. I've heard there's a feeling that we need to get as much money into the hands of teachers as possible. I passionately agree with that, and wholeheartedly, but not at the expense of equity, unity, rapport, and good morale. Legality. Educators have been financially hurt over the past decade, and the courts have decided that we were hurt by an illegal act. Damages now have to be paid, as logic determines that damages be paid to those who were hurt by the illegal act. Who was hurt? It was the educators and it was the children, okay? In making that right, those that were hurt legally should bear the benefits. And one last thing, if I may. I've been a principal for 13 years. Once in that time was I able to email my superintendent and say thank you for my raise, okay? Once. We've hired new people into the district at
We
a
need to
higher
wrap up,
salary
Mr.
than
Snyder,
me.
sorry.
At a higher salary than me, because we don't pay enough to bring these people that we really need, so we just have to do that. I hope you would pay all of us enough so that we continue to stay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Aylward, you're up. And then on deck is Ray Connolly.
I know these are difficult things in terms of how we divvy things up. And I have in the 25 years that I've been teaching in this district, I've had the best administrative support that anybody could ask for. And I think that we should get creative. I don't think that our administrators should be required to work 12 months out of the year when other administrators in other districts aren't. Let's keep their salaries exactly where they are. Give them some increase, but give them a month and a half to use at their discretion. Give them back to 10 and a half months. Many districts do that very effectively. But this shouldn't be about us as teachers and them as administrators and people as classified or certified. I bring you the numbers that says we're not in this together, even though we've tried over the years to be very intentional. You look at the wedges. You notice that graphic up there wasn't very easy to tell what the percentages were because it was round and bars. And the graphics I've given you tell you the percentages each and every year in salary dollars. You talk about small changes and not being significant. As a percentage of M&O, 45.2, 43.5, 41.6, 42.2, 40.7, 38.3, 36.3, 34.1, 33.9, 34.4, 35.6, 32.7, 32.7, 29.1, 29.2, and there's a couple of years because that ends at 14. Every little bit adds and adds, or in this case, subtracts and subtracts from the relative priority of the instructional classroom teacher. There is no other category that has shrunk like that since 1999. I heard talk about a salary schedule for administrators with a cap and a salary schedule for, last I heard we didn't have a salary schedule for teachers, and if we do, I'd love to see it, because in 2002, somebody with my experience at 25 years and a master's degree plus 70 hours of graduate work after that would have earned $63,000. I am nowhere close after 25 years in this district as an educator who does not near the lion's share that my principal does. I'll guarantee you that. He's here before me and leaves after me, but it's not by very much when you check the parking lot. And I wouldn't want his job for the world. But if we let this continue, if this trend is the next 15 years, if we don't start looking at what our priorities are, then we will be in a worse shape compared to the districts around us. And I know that's time, and I know it's not, we can't hope to compete with the Phoenix unions and the Glendale unions, but I mean, at $60,000 for an average salary and $55,000, that's where I have to say goodbye to the teachers around me who keep leaving. Mm-hmm. The new teachers leave not because they didn't get an extra few $100s, it's because the people who have been here for 25 years look at them and say, I'm never going to get to $62,000 in the way they did in 2002. You look at the tiered, the first 5 years are worth $600, but the 25th year, it's worth $100. I would love to take everyone in this room and march on the Capitol. And you know that I've tried to get people on the streets and do anything I can for our override, for this bond issue.
We need to wrap up,
necessary.
sir. Sorry. Thank you.
But we've got to do something for the tip of the spear that reverses this trend. It's not been intentional, but we have to be intentional about restoring.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up, Ray Connolly, and on deck, David Serafin.
President Bullock, board members, Dr. Santarelli, Dr. Cruz. People, excellence, opportunity, respect, innovation, achievement. These are the values of PUSD, and they begin with people. We all work to empower students to fulfill their potential. The culture of our district has always been one of unity. We are not divisive, nor do we tear each other down. This is evident in our district goals for achievement and instruction. All Peoria Unified School District teachers, staff, and administrators are responsible for ensuring graduates demonstrate the skills necessary for college and career success. All Peoria Unified School District staff responsible for instruction are accountable for providing a rigorous, relevant, and aligned curriculum, exemplary instructional practice, district-approved instructional materials, and aligned assessments. That's a whole lot of people involved in those words, in the word all. In order to reach these goals and meet the standards set by us and approved by you, every district employee is needed. We love this district. Our students, our families, our colleagues. We have stayed during the lean times because of that. Again, we have all been frozen. We have all experienced compression and inversion. We have all been patiently waiting for compensation. We hope that you recognize that every staff member in this district is deserving of fair and equitable compensation. We are the people that make up this district, and it is my hope that you will fairly compensate us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. David, did I slaughter your last name?
No, Serafin, that's correct.
Okay, thank you so much. And then our next on deck is Paul Bauer.
President Bullock, Governing Board, Dr. Santarelli, Dr. Cruz. My name is David Serafin. I'm an assistant principal at Cactus High School. I've been in the Peoria Unified School District for 18 years. I'd like to advocate for raises across the board for all PUSD employees. My wife, I called her tonight. I said, hey, I'm going to talk in front of the board about raises and all of this stuff going on. And she's like, well, what are you doing? Why, you're just an assistant principal, and you're not great in these situations. I said, this is about the greatness of PUSD and what I believe in. And right then she said, okay, good luck. I love you. I taught science for 15 years in the district, and one of the big concepts I taught was this idea of homeostasis, maintaining a stable internal environment. It's where all the systems work together to maintain the stable internal environment. Then I was sitting in an assistant principal's meeting, and Dr. Cruz said, as a district, we have systems. I'm like, wow, systems, homeostasis. It's bigger than that, though. Our systems working together, it's synergy. We all work together to get synergy, this greatness. But we have to be in this together. We have to be unified. That's the big piece here. And I'm worried about this where we start saying, well, administrators don't get this group gets this. We're going to lose that piece. And that's my passion of talking to you tonight. President Bullock, one of my deciding factors becoming an administrator, you talked about us being one of the top 10 school districts in the United States. I believe that. I have the fire in my heart to keep that mission going. But I think making a decision where we start saying, well, this group does this group does this, that worries me about the greatness of what we all want to accomplish. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Bauer. And actually, you are the last speaker. Ms. McCarty, or any other? Just make sure I don't miss anybody. Thank you, sir.
President Bullock, good evening, members of the board, Dr. Santarelli, Dr. Cruz. It's been my pleasure and honor to serve for the last 30 years as a teacher, principal, coach, and club sponsor, serving the students, staff, and families of the Peoria Unified School District. And we've all suffered mightily through the last decade. We've seen our pay reduced and frozen while our expenses have increased. We've worked tirelessly to ensure extremely high levels of student achievement, both in and out of the classroom. We consistently have focused on the needs of others. We support each other. We encourage each other. We challenge each other. And tonight you saw some of our Stuco kids. We celebrate each other. The emphasis has always been that we serve together for the betterment of our students. A case in point is our recent committees working on both the budget and the compensation plans. Diverse team members work together to develop a course of action that will continue our unity. Each part of our school district plays an integral part of the success of our students, staff, families, and communities. To reward one group at the expense of another could have a serious detrimental impact on our schools, district, and community, but perhaps more importantly, on our students. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk to you and for serving in a wonderful, blessed school district.
Thank you very much. Spoke. We appreciate it. We appreciate your passion and what you do for our district. It really helps us too to learn a lot of things that we need to work on in the future. So, Mr. Hancock, thank you. Welcome back. All right, board members now. Dr. Senator,
Yes, if I could, Mr. Bullock, a couple of comments. And Mr. Hancock, if you could put the first slide, the pie chart graph slide up for just a minute. I'll speak to that in just a second. First of all, wow, you know, anytime I'm around PUSD employees, I'm always inspired and in awe. And even though tonight we are here with a little bit of a difference of opinion, you are still representing yourselves and your profession in a mighty way. You all know that there's no greater advocate for what you do, whether in the classroom or driving a bus or leading the charge, than me. So thank you for being here and your interest tonight. I wanted to remind the governing board of a couple things. First of all, this chart that you see before you, I heard some questions about the percentages and where they came from and couldn't we adjust those and so on and so forth. I recognize that 3 of our board members are new since January. This was board adopted and approved a couple of years ago. So when Mr. Hicks came to the district, one of the things he talked about was what kind of process can we put into place in this district that will further empower all employee groups to have a vested say in how we determine compensation. So one of the things that was agreed upon and presented to the board was this percentage chart. Now, I won't go into great detail. Oh, gosh, my time's up. After 35 years, I get 2 and...
A green slip, sir. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I know. I know we appointed a new superintendent, so maybe I'll allow him to come up and speak on my behalf tonight. But this was board approved, so it wasn't numbers that were pulled out of the sky, and this was after much deliberation and input from employee groups. And the way that the percentages were derived were actually based upon dollars, not numbers of employees, which also favored the certified, particularly over the classified. As you know, as a district, our classified employees pretty much are even to our certified, but that's not represented here. So that was board approved. The second thing that I'll remind particularly the board and those of you that weren't here was that the board also approved a process. And I'll give Mr. Hicks credit for bringing a process to this district that allowed for our employee groups to put forth recommendations relative to compensation and budget. And so we've been operating under that board-approved process now for 3 years. So this is the 3rd year. So this whole thing didn't come about in isolation, but it was with a lot of input and discussion by our employees that helped us make these recommendations. Thirdly, for a long time in this district, we had an association advisory that meets directly with superintendent, and that is in place as well and has been for many years. And this was also vetted after it came out of those compensation committees with our association advisory, and they also endorsed the recommendations that you're hearing today. Minus the reduction in admin, as you've heard, that was my suggestion to drop that to 1.5 from the 3%. So there's a process in place. The process, in my opinion, is a valuable part of what we do and how we do it. We have, and I've had the distinct pleasure and misfortune of being superintendent of a district during probably the worst of times financially. Best of times from a lot of other ways, but the worst of times from a financial perspective. And one of the things that I pride myself on as I'm doing my swan song is that during those difficult times when we cut 300 people and took furloughs and we had to make some terribly difficult decisions, never did we splinter and become divisive. And I'm extremely proud of that. That's testimony to you, not me. You've continued to keep your eye on the ball. You've continued to do what you knew was best, and you continued to work together, as was pointed out very evidently tonight. My point here is that I've been doing this a while, and I'll just say directly to the governing board, we are at a tipping point with this issue, in my opinion. And I think that if there are not careful considerations given to the process and the people and the recommendations, I believe we are at a tipping point of divisiveness that will be hard to recover from as a district. And one other comment, and then Mr. Bullock, back to you. This issue of back pay, and I think it was alluded to, actually spoken very directly to. This lawsuit is a legal action based upon the inability of the state to do what they needed to do to support public education. All of our employee groups suffered from that legal situation or illegal situation. If in fact this proposition passes, and there's no guarantee that it will, but all the employees that have endured that, in my opinion, should also be the benefactors of that money. And it's not a lot. This Prop 123 thing doesn't even get us back to where we really were, let alone where we need to go. But we can't get there if we splinter and divide, and we start to lose what we know has been the hallmark of this district. So I'll leave it with that, Mr. Bullock, and turn it back to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Santarelli. Of course, this is an action item. Obviously, if there's any more comments or questions, we can ask Mr. Hicks or Mr. Hancock. I'm going to, one comment, I always defer to my fellow board members. I'm going to be selfish and take a quick last comment, and again, open it up to everybody else. Obviously, a heated topic. My position's well stated. I know there's no question where I stand. I, however, have learned a lot. It's not changing my opinion of tonight's action and my one vote, but I really appreciate what you've given us. I really appreciate that it's been pointed out that the system can be improved on. A big part of that is money from the state. A big part of it also is us as a board, and maybe we'll take this as a charge as a board to become more in-depth and more ingrained in the process, to learn more, help more, become more educated on how we can not just every year be, having all these problems with a couple $1 million, but we're hoping larger amount of money comes, that we are able to, as a board, to be able to take some of these suggestions and say, how do we move forward with, for example, a salary schedule and other things that make complete sense. Again, I'm speaking from a business point of view. That's my big experience. I'm not a teacher, obviously. But a lot of things that were said tonight make complete logical sense to move forward. I believe this time we need to go with the recommendation. That's my opinion, and I'll be standing on that, although I did learn a lot tonight, and it is spawning some ideas that need to be acted on quickly as a board to move us in a positive direction. So I will, any other final comments or considerations? I want to give all board members an equal share since I took my 60 seconds. Questions? Okay.
I do have a question. Does this recommendation address the compression issue at all? Or is that just in a board, across the board increase for everybody?
President Bullock, Board Member Doan, yes, it does address compression with last meeting's board action and this recommendation. And what I mean by that is the salary schedule that I mentioned the initial placement salary schedule. And if you remember on the approval last board meeting, that schedule did not have any increases to the new teacher pay that's being offered to employees coming in. So the 6.81% raise or the 2.5% increase does address the compression because the new people coming in are not being paid that percentage higher. So the teachers that are currently here and loyal to the district, administrators, classified staff, will have a portion of the compression addressed with this recommendation.
Thank you.
Ms. Connect, any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I'm not going to support this. It doesn't address our greatest need, which is the attraction and retention of teachers. I think we know that. Certainly, if we were to adjust this, we would be moving in the right direction. My understanding is that teachers in our district are making about $5,000 less than our peer districts. that is not a way to be sustainable. I'm certainly not proposing that we do not give administration raises. I'm just saying that that by doing an equal rate, that is not an equitable solution. Equity means that people get what they need, and right now the greatest need is represented, in my opinion, by our teachers. So I will not be supporting this.
Okay, thank you. All right, and to make sure, last time, okay, question, I appreciate it. All right, this is an action item. I will move it since I've been talking about it. I hereby move that we accept and approve the compensation increases and the certified retention stipends for the 2016-2017 school year. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Okay. It's been moved by myself, seconded by Mr. Jonigan. This is a vote. Board members, please cast your vote. Oops, technical difficulty. We have one more. All right, vote is 3 noes and 2 yes. The motion does not pass as stated. Okay.
Mr. Bullock, given that vote, we'll need direction to administration relative to what to do from this point moving forward regarding compensation. We had hoped to get contracts out tomorrow. This will delay that significantly, so we'll need direction for Mr. Hicks and Mr. Hancock.
Okay. I will look to the board members who voted no for some direction.
I proposed some percentages for the chart, but I don't know what those numbers mean, and I would like to ensure that the administration does receive a raise, so I'd like to see what kind of percentage raise that manifests as.
Any questions back, by all means, just so we make sure we're clear on both sides.
President Bullock, members of the board, so to be clear, using your previous split, the 70, 24, and 6%, and then just push that through the 3 formulas.
Yeah, I'm not a mathematician. I know that that's the model that Deer Valley uses, and they've been successful over the last couple of years of bringing their teacher compensation up. I suspect that with that slight adjustment, that would still allow money for administration to also receive a raise to their base. So I'd like to see what that looks like. And I don't expect that tonight.
Mrs. Doan, Mrs. Pangarelli, offer some help to the gentleman. Either one.
Well, I
Anyone
know.
else want to see that?
I know it's difficult and makes a lot more work, but there are some teachers that have, it's a severe compression issue. I would like to see more within the percentage given to the teachers. I would like to see those teachers that are hardest hit by the compression relieved the most. I'm not talking about taking from admin right now. I'm talking about within the percentage given to the teachers. I'd like to see something done about those teachers that are hardest hit by the compression.
Let me just speak real quick to my fellow board members. What we're trying to do, and I know we're working on this, but to give them specific direction, because there's, yes, we want to address everyone's concerns. I'm not forcing anything, but we do have time issues of contract issuance. So if you could, maybe we can give them, certain things we want to see this percentage, I want to see this timeline, that would be really helpful to them, because they're kind of looking at us like, well, what do you want?
Well,
So
maybe we should get together and talk about this like we probably should have before tonight.
that's fine, but I'm saying, let's make a suggestion so that they know exactly what to do. That's all I'm saying. So we don't want to leave here tonight with a bunch of unknowns. That's all. Does that make sense? So.
What
Mr. Donegan?
timeline, well, you mentioned timelines. What timelines are we up against?
Contract issuance. Yeah. No.
What's the date?
Mr. Hancock.
What's the date?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay.
Really, did you want to offer any direction?
What?
What, sorry. No, that's fine. Yeah, just go ahead. Your opinion.
No, I would like to have had more time to have considered this. I mean, you know, I don't want to make this an us versus them, but, I'll defer it to you.
That's fine. I just want to be able to give, for those who oppose it, be able to give direction so that, you know, if you want to have more meetings, if you want to give any direction, just so they know where to go to make sure that everything moves along at an orderly pace versus let's think about it for a while. So let's make a suggestion on how that could handle it. And maybe you have a better suggestion, Mr. Hancock?
President Bullock, Mr. Jonigan, I just wanted to address your question as far as the timelines. It does take several days to print the contracts and to make adjustments based on any compensation changes, and that is per employee group and those different types. And as just to address, you know, our attract, retain, and recruit for all staff members, having our certified contracts go out and a little bit later, our administrative and possibly classified, that may have a negative impact there. So, you know, any specific direction would be much appreciated.
That's why I asked the question.
We need something else to look at. It's not going to happen tonight.
No, I know. I'm just.
So, Mr. Hicks, when can you give us some more numbers to look at?
I can have it done, President Bullock, members of the board, before tonight. Before I go home tonight, I'll shoot it out to Dr. Santarelli for disbursement.
Okay.
Now,
But
go ahead, sorry.
President Bullock, members of the board, this requires an action item, so providing information is a one-way street without a governing board meeting to actually officially act on it, which needs 24 hours in advance for setting the agenda and providing that.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bullock. Obviously, this is something that the board has requested to deliberate and talk about more. The only way that we can do that is schedule a meeting.
Right.
So
Do we hammer it out?
I don't want to have Mr. Hicks put together some information and get it out to you, and then you not have a chance to get together and deliberate and provide follow-up direction. So I'm just offering that we could put a lot of numbers together, but absent direction, your collaboration, we could be in that loop for several iterations, if you will, as a suggestion, so something to deliberate.
So what is your suggestion, Dr. Santarelli?
My second suggestion is the board schedule a study session to provide administration with specific direction on compensation for our employees.
Would you like to go ahead and motion that?
I move to schedule a study session for the sake of establishing compensation plan for next year.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. And I'll preface my vote on that. I'll have to vote yes because we have to get this moving forward. I see the frustration on both sides. We need a direction quickly. To be honest with you, and I know this is going to frustrate my fellow board members, but again, it's with respect. This has been actually agenda item for a couple of weeks. We've actually talked about these numbers for a couple of weeks. They've been presented in different elements before. So we do have a lot of data. So I'm hoping if we're doing this meeting that we can do this very quickly because this data is not just being presented tonight. We've actually had these, and you can actually go past meetings and see where this has been talked about before. And this has been an agenda item for a couple of weeks. We've known about it. So I just want to make, again, not to frustrate board members, but we have known about this for a couple of weeks now, and the numbers have been available. So if we want to meet to discuss it, then let's do it ASAP. Again, I vote for accepting it, but in the essence and the spirit of getting this done quickly, I'll be happy to meet whenever, wherever, to get this hammered out quickly so there's not any domino effect that affects everybody. So if we have a second, it's been moved and seconded. You want to give more direction to Mrs. McCarty so she can write the motion? Mrs. Connect, since you offered it.
Did you get that, Mrs. McCarty?
Mr. Bullock, could you please tell us who seconded the motion?
What's mine? Mrs. Pangarelli.
So Mrs. Connect moved and
it,
Mrs. Pangarelli seconded.
Correct.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
Yep. All right, so a new motion has been made. Thank you, Mrs. McCarty. The new motion is to move to schedule a study session to address employee compensation. Is that an appropriate we don't want to put a date on it because obviously we can't spawn a date at this very second. Do we want to create a date at this very moment to try and alleviate some pressure? I would prefer that we establish a date right now.
How about
That we
tomorrow?
can move in the motion, just so we can alleviate pressure.
How about tomorrow?
Schedules. This tomorrow's Friday.
We need 24 hours posting notice, so Monday would be the earliest day we could do the meeting.
I am available Monday afternoon. Anybody else calendars, Ms. Pangarelli?
Okay.
Afternoon? Mrs. Doan, schedule?
I can do Monday.
Mrs. Connect, schedule?
I'm looking.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Okay. What time?
I'm
Okay.
good with Monday.
All right, we have one board member, Mr. John, will not be able to meet until about 7 o'clock
PM?
PM.
Do it.
Can we do that?
I'll make it work.
Saturday. Work? Cannot.
My mom's moving.
7 o'clock Monday night? No, that's fine. I know, I understand, we have day jobs too. All right, 7 o'clock Monday night, here. Can we meet here?
It's the 18th.
On the 18th?
Make it work.
All right, thank you. Okay. We'll assume 7, if you can do early, if any earlier, Mr. Johnigan will let us know.
Look at it again. Right?
Okay. Okay.
Night, ladies.
And if you can get out earlier, you're not talking more than like a half an hour, right?
The earlier the better.
Mr. Bullock, if we post the meeting for 7, we will not be able to start early.
I stand corrected, thank you. All these technicalities, right?
Sorry.
Public versus private world, I
Sorry.
appreciate that. All right, 7 PM it is, okay? Okay.
If you can indulge me, I can look at some options real quick. I'm sorry, I just text quite a few people, so.
Oh, of course.
To make this so that we can, is there some legal thing that we need to do to make it so that we can give the direction and have the,
Mr. Bullock, Mr.
make a
Doan,
decision then?
absent the specificity of a recommendation, we would be in violation of open meeting law by not having that information available to our community in advance.
We need tonight to say that we plan to make a recommendation then.
We would not be able to make a recommendation unless we were able to present the recommendation 24 hours before the meeting for our
So we'd
community
have to
to
make it-
react to.
And then do it Tuesday.
Yes, that's the idea.
Also, the board, the ROTC dinner is also on Monday night, so. Anyway, I was planning on attending, but obviously we want to get this taken care of, so. if anybody else has a
In
plan.
looking at schedules, I could probably move that to 6.
Can you?
I could make 6 work.
All right, let's do,
6:30 in the morning.
I have to be at my office by 7:30, so
those bank executives, you know how they are.
whoever said banking
Let's-
hours.
I apologize, can we change it to 6 o'clock? That would, Mr. Johnigan can get here earlier, so that'd be great. 6 PM we'll change the motion to. And all right, we'll meet here at 6 PM. That works, Ms. Pangarelli? Good? Okay, Ms. Stone, Ms. Connect, everybody's good, 6? April 18th. Okay. Has been changed. All right, so if you want to go ahead and move the new motion.
Move to convene at 6 PM next Monday, the 18th,
Right.
for a discussion regarding compensation.
Okay, do we have a second? Same second. Okay, and go ahead and cast your vote. All right, that moves 5-0. So thank you very much. 6 o'clock on Monday night here at the district office. Okay? All right, move on to the next item on the agenda is consideration of approval of the issuance of certified administrative contracts for the 16-17 school year, which we cannot do, correct? Or
President Bullock, members of the board, we can, this is simply the list of names that will be offered contracts.
Okay.
There is no compensation details on these documents.
Great, okay, just want to clarify that. Okay,
I move to approve.
I'll second.
all right. There we go. Moved by Mrs. Connect, seconded by Mrs. Doan to approve the issuance of certified administrative contracts for the 16-17 school year. Please cast your vote. Passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Hancock. Your shortest presentation in history. Next item on the agenda, report on, speaking of legislation, report and discussion on local, state, and federal legislative issues and activities. Dr. Santarelli.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bullock. There's not a lot going on right now. There are a couple of bills, though, that I've asked Dr. Cruz to provide an update on, and I've asked Mr. Hicks to just do a brief 30-second update on budget.
Mr. Bullock, Governing Board, we've had some insight into some of the budget negotiations that are a little troublesome. We've got some sight into the fact that they're trying to move some money out of the Move On When Reading allocated budget and trying to move it into some type of technology piece, which is very worrisome, that if they move that money from the Move On When Reading budget into that, that would move allocated dollars away from all Move On When Reading budgets from allocated dollars to the districts. That would be about a $100,000 hit to Peoria. We already have that money allocated out. That's what pays for all of our reading specialists right now, so that would be very troublesome. We'd have to go out and find that money somewhere else to be able to cover those dollars here. So we're hoping that that is not the case and doesn't transpire. Those budget negotiations have been kind of behind closed doors. We've just kind of caught wind. We're trying to get ahead of that. So the other piece is, and I've brought this back several times, the House Bill 2088, the survey bill they're calling it, and on the surface it seems rather innocuous, but it really does have some far-reaching effects where we have to get parent permission before we administer any surveys to our students. And while on the surface this sounds like a very, very good thing, it does really tie our hands when we're trying to do really good things for our students. And I'll just give you an example. We've done a lot of really good things with our students in the area of college and career readiness. For instance, we've asked students to fill out college application campaigns, and we've done a lot of work in the area of having them do their FAFSAs to try to have them gain access to college. We would have to ensure that every student had parental permission to be able to do that in order to have them gain access to that. And some parents really just may not give us permission to do that. So it's just another barrier to have to get over in order to help kids get access to those college pieces that really are barriers to students, and another hurdle to help kids get access to the things they need. And it just seems like we have to continue to fight battles that we don't need to fight to help kids get what they need. So anyway, we continue to help battle against things like that.
FAFSA is brutal.
It is brutal, and we're trying to help kids get through that, and especially our first-going students, those first-generational students that are going to college when their parents can't help them at home. So it's tough, so we're continuing to fight against that and work for amendments on that bill.
Thank you for fighting the good fight, trying to simplify bureaucracy, which is always very hard to do. Dr. Santarelli, anything else?
Mr. Hicks, anything on the budget?
Thank you very much, President Bullock, members of the board. Starting with Monday, I did meet with Senator Allen for a few hours, really making the case on the current year funding and the issues it has. At the same time, they're trying to upgrade their AZ-ED's data system, student information system, and the complexity and the casualties or the issues that arise out of that and the costs, and that it will be bared by school districts. I think there was some level of headway. It was including Arizona Department of Education was in there, and they actually agreed that probably what's in the best interest of school districts at this time would be a one-year delay in current year funding. So that was appreciative of Mr. Bradley to state that in the meeting. Budgets were actually, if those that were reading a lot of the lobbyists and other news, you thought that we were going to have a budget by today. Obviously, it did not come out today, and they're not in tomorrow, so the budget they're hoping will come out next week. And I believe right now it looks like the Senate will be a little bit ahead of the House, so they'll send the budget over to the House. right now the two bodies are not talking to each other very much. We do, and I think it is important to note that tomorrow morning we'll be hosting Senator Burgess will be at our district. We're going to be with her for a little bit of time, hopefully talking about the current year funding and issues related to the new data system and our concerns that we have with that. And we appreciate her time and commitment to come out to the district.
Good. Good, thank you very much. Appreciate that update. Next item on the agenda is number 17, request for agenda items for future governing board meetings. I'll start with my right. Ms. Pangarelli, any agenda items? Mr. Jonigan.
One I would just like to bring up in light of a new superintendent coming on board effective July 1st is throwing out the suggestion, and I don't know if it's an agenda item or if it's more of a discussion point, but I would like to see a board retreat as soon as possible after the July 1st effectiveness date, just to kind of get everyone on the same page and get things started on the right foot. So that would be my suggestion, however best suited. I'll look to you.
I agree.
No, I agree. I think it'd be good to get to know each other better, directions, history, present and future. Be a good discussion. I can completely support that, so we will schedule that appropriately through our agenda setting process and bring that back. Thank you. Good. Thank you very much. Mrs. Connect?
Yeah?
A future agenda item?
No, sir.
Okay. Mrs. Doan?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Move on to the next item, number 18. Consideration of approval of the consent agenda. Board members, do you want to pull any items in tonight's consent agenda for review?
Nope.
No?
No.
All right, we need a motion and a second to move this to a vote. Do I have a motion?
I motion that we approve the items on the consent agenda as presented.
Great, do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, moved by Mr. Jonigan, seconded by Ms. Pangarelli. This is a vote. Please cast your vote, board members. That passes 5-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is our 28 Budget Facilities Planning Construction Report. And again, if you ever have questions, these reports are always available on our website as PDF documents. You can get it on your phone, your tablet, your laptop, whatever you'd like. Great nighttime reading, as I mentioned, when the Ambien doesn't work. So read away. But this is one of the best ones because it talks about what's being done at a school near you. HVAC, roofing. Did I just make up a name? Roofs, security, that type of thing, curriculum. So we appreciate that. All right, next item on the agenda is number 29, the district budget report for the month of February 2016. This one is near and dear to Mr. Hicks's heart. All right, talks about our adopted budgets, our year-to-date expenditures as we get towards the end of our fiscal year. Thank you. Number 30 is a district enrollment report for February 2016. It's always kind of cool to see at a school near you, maybe where your kids go, what the enrollment is. If it goes up, it goes down, stays the same. At the very end, last page is a summation of our net increase, decrease by school and by district in student enrollment. Number 31, next item on the agenda is report on upcoming meetings and events. If you pull that open real quick. One event that you please must schedule, April 25th, Pride of Peoria and the Raymond S. Kellis Leadership Awards Ceremony is the culmination of an amazing year at an amazing school district as we honor the best of the best and award recipients from the Dr. Kellis Award given by his son, Dr. Quinn Kellis. Look forward to that presentation again this year. All right, great, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the draft agenda for the April 28th regular board meeting in 2 weeks. Starts at 5 p.m. Quick run through that. There we go. Oops, that's right. It's all available online. Next to last, number 33, it's a board member opportunity to readdress agenda items. This is our go back in time option. Board members, do you want to go back and discuss any item on the agenda tonight? From my right? Nope. From my left? Okay. The next item on the agenda is our final 34. It's our consideration of adjournment and head home agenda. We need a motion and a second to adjourn for the evening or take it to a vote.
I motion to adjourn.
Okay, a second?
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Go ahead and cast your vote. All right, passes 5-0. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a safe trip home.